Oh, well, bugger it. I was waiting for Jared, but he still hasn't appeared, so I'll just have to start. So I suspect he's cooking something, apparently. Anyway, so see where that gets us in that regard. So it was. I didn't get a chance to see Pim's stream, but I did see Bart, so that was enjoyable. You know, different angles, different interests and all that. Sorry about the croaky voice. I've had a bit of a cold for the last 3 days, so it's been I've got a bit of a croaky voice. So if it actually starts breaking and I start coughing a bit, you know why it is. Yes, carnivals are not immune to getting colds, especially when you're in an office without any filters on the damn air conditioning. So those viral loads just circulate and circulate and circulate. And even though I tend to not get too many colds nowadays, but at the end, at some stage, you do succumb. So unfortunately, I did succumb, and Friday was much worse. Yesterday wasn't too bad, and today I feel a bit better than what I was. So, but I still got a bit of congestion and stuff like that, noses. Yeah, so if you see me sneezing or anything or coughing, it's part of that. So do apologise beforehand. But yes, Uncle Harry is getting bloody old, and yeah. And so, yes, he does succumb to more ailments, unfortunately, but not many compared to others. So, anyway, it's good to see you guys. Hopefully, Jared turns up soon. Trying to make us all hungry with his steaks, so that'll be a bit fun. Anyway, let me just quickly sort of go through everything. I'm just gonna, just go through. Yeah, veins. Oh, disappointing. He hasn't turned up yet. What happened? Oh God. There's my comment. There's Kitty's comment. There's my comment again, and following on. I do have a theory. Where's my theory? Down here somewhere. Nope. Where is it? Yeah, what's somewhere here? Ah, there it is. Must be. Couldn't be anything else. The universe is turned upside down or something. So Deborah was surprised with her DNA ancestry. She must have did okay. Found a few different things. We can look at some of that sort of stuff. There are specific, snips that you're interested in. Let me know. Let me just go through. Eating my reindeer broth egg. So that was my soup thing at the moment. Good for you. Sounds like I had a bit of a feast last night, so I was up at my sister's place, and we had she barbecued a large piece of pork, so thick slabs like that. There he is.
Here I am.
G'day, mate.
Hey, how's it going?
I was just talking about last night what I was doing, so while I was coughing, I've had a bit of a cold for the last bloody 3 days, so I've got a bit of a croaky voice you could probably hear. So
hopefully I don't catch it from you.
No, not at your distance. It's been going through the office. Our office is really, really a shit place to work because they got no filters. So it just circulates everything, all the air around. When we get dust, like there are bushfires and dust comes through, it comes through the filtration as well. It's just, what do you do? Older buildings, you can't really do much at the end of the day. I have to put up with that for the next 7 years. Well, 6.5. I am 54 this year, so 6.5 until I can actually pull the plug and retire and try something new.
And I suppose you don't want to get a respirator to work in for those 6 years.
Look, it doesn't happen. Look, the funny thing is, since I've been, once I did sort of, when I was doing keto, I probably was getting sicker more than as carnivore, more often. When I was doing actually low carb, I wasn't. So, so it's a bit strange. Maybe because for a period there, I did actually do more like a therapeutic, really low protein, higher. And since then, I've learnt that things like L-carnitine play a big role in in sort of dealing with sort of these sort of issues. So which is important because a lot of people just don't know that it sort of has. What happens with viruses, they have a tendency, remember your doctor usually tells you, oh, your lymph nodes are basically inflamed. Well, remember, all the chylomicrons go through the lymphatic system. So it sort of has like a hijacking of the fatty acid metabolism, viruses and stuff like that. So L-carnitine, has a sort of inhibitory effect on that. So it's, so when you're eating a more, probably beef would have more, sort of, most ruminants would have more L-carnitine than sort of, well, most things like beef, lamb, mutton, which is older lamb, things like that would have more in their flesh compared to things like chicken, or certain fish would have a bit more L-carnitine compared to as well. So that plays a role in that regard. So that's a sort of another thing. But I've sort of a mate of mine sort of is heavy onto L-carnitine supplementation, stuff like that. He does a lot of exercise and stuff like that, and he sort of swears by it in terms of hardly ever getting any colds or anything like that. And and there is science. There is science. I mean, one thing that I'll actually bring it up on screen.
I've definitely found I get sick less often on a carnivore
I
diet.
had to refine this because I couldn't actually. They actually now provide the full text on the so you can actually download the PDF, but they weren't last time I actually looked at it, and this was a couple of years back because this came out in 2017, but just wasn't accessible, which was sort of unfortunate at the time. Sometimes you go to PubMed and not everything is accessible, so you can't actually get it, and so. Hold on. My screen has a tendency. It's not going to work, is it? No. Oh, it's settled down. Okay, good. It says I've got it plugged in with an adapter and sort of can play up sometimes when it gets a bit loose because I've got another thing jammed in there. Too many things jammed in. Oh, that was annoying. Hold on. Why did that die on me?
Yeah, Butter is sleeping behind my laptop screen right now. Honest just asked if Butter's there with me. She is. I doubt she'll be quite as active or rambunctious this time because I don't have steak by my computer, so she's just chilling. She peeked out at me when I said her name.
So, and that's basically the actual study where they're actually looking at it. Another good study from Japan. So if anybody wants to read it, that's what it's called. So, and it's hepatitis C virus. But anyway, it's one thing I didn't get vaccinated for. I am vaccinated for B and A because I do tend to go into Asia. So that's one of the most prevalent ones, which you can catch very easily. So anyway, I better sort of scroll back, see whether there are any questions. Oh. They can't help themselves.
Well, I see 13 people watching and 13 thumbs up. So you can't ask for a better like ratio than that. Oh, I wasn't on. Yeah, I missed Bart's stream this week, actually. I didn't see it. I was at the gym.
Actually, Deborah, which snip is it? Because I actually need to know the actual snips so I can actually look them up. Because I just can't remember them off the top of my head. There's so many that actually affect all these different pathways. So just put the RS number so that I know which one I'm actually looking at. And also what its risk factor. And the other thing is to actually look at, to just make sure that it's not an association, because sometimes they can be associations, and associations, well, highly confounded. Yeah, you can't sort of rely on it. If you've got quite a few, just if you want to, so we don't end up with a whole lot of stream of genetic sort of stuff on there. Just send me a sort of an email and actually just ask me for specific types. I mean, I actually brought up my own, and I was actually, let me just share that for a sec. This isn't, this is sort of not sort of, oops. Yeah, hold on. Is that visible? So I was actually, because these are sort of like different risk type, like celiac genes. There's the PUFA one. So I'm good on that one. I can convert omega-6s from plants and omega-3s really efficiently. So, the sort of the farmers sort of genes, I've got both of those. I'm good on the vitamin D status. The sort of issues with choline issues. So I prioritize eggs. This is something that I'm going to go through at some stage. It's just like my other bloody list of all these, like the game changers or, health. And I've got all these little things, Ansel keys, B, ApoE, all these different bloody things, boron or whatever else. But I just, there's just too many. And at some stage, I'm going to go through those. I've got them all lined up to happen at some point on my channel. But, there's just, I do work, full time. And so I can only do occasionally, like this weekend. After this, I'll be doing something, which I did half last week, and I'll finish it off this one, the choline one, and put it up. So that'll be out of the way. And then next week I'll try and do something additional. It's just basically the time constraint. Send me through an email with the specific snips that you're actually interested and concerned about. And also, if you can see these snips on the, I'll actually, because once I've got your email, I'll actually send you back referencing in regards to these ones as well. So at least you can actually check those as well, and you can get a better sort of a rundown. Let me just stop that. So you've got a sort of a better overview, because exactly. So if I've got a couple, then you can actually just give me all those key snips, and if you're not sure about them, I can send you an email and basically say, these are the ones you really need to possibly could be concerned. Give me an idea of your ancestry as well. So, because that gives me a bit of an idea of certain populations are more at risk of certain things or have certain pathways that are inhibited, or less favorable for whatever reason, because of their diet and whatever else. So, yeah, give me some idea, and then I can give you something a bit more comprehensive. You're welcome. Now, let's sort of more general questions. Let me just go back up. So, Negro Kitty, I was going to get 23andMe, but I've been waiting for a holiday. Okay, so you've got the option of going for either one, for the $99 or the $200. I mean, the $200 is more comprehensive. I went for the $99, and it covered most of the things that I was actually interested in. But obviously, the $200 will actually allow you to data mine your own genetics for some time. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it'll just basically allow you to refine things a bit better. I think the $99 covers most things, like the methylation side and a whole lot of other things. So, yeah, in that regard. There you go. You got your new nickname, unfortunately.
Grandpa
this crowd.
I guess for this crowd.
This
Maybe
crowd.
the carnivore diet's not as good for longevity as I'm hoping.
Seems not. This crowd's very critical. But I remind them, if you look at me, I'm somebody that, compared to many others, probably in the carnivore community, have been one of the most unhealthiest person. Like from my 20s onwards, or I started smoking at about, my first tobacco was about 13, and it was light, and then it got heavier, 2 packs eventually in my 20s and all that. And so I'm talking about, by the time I got into my edging into a mid to late, slightly beyond mid 30s. So we're talking about, 2.5 decades plus, whatever, nearly, heading to. So I was, smoking for some time. I also have high detoxification genes, so and tended to drink heavily as well. So I was a heavy drinker. People know, like grappa, like Greek, the Italians and Greeks, spirit. That's like rocket fuel, 70% proof. So I used to down a couple of those, and used to do shooters with my mates. So and used to gamble and do a whole lot of other things. So so basically, I'm, my lifestyle is, and then I cooked everything in fucking seed oils because I thought the doctors were right. And so by the time I got to my mid, 40s, I ended up with heart condition. I ended up with, getting operation. But now that's about, about a decade away since that happened, So if you look at, now my situation, I'm 53. My mother's hair went white when she was in her 30s. I mean, great. My cousins on my mother's side, both of them, from Marty Helen's kids, they're in Sydney. They live, and they basically, one's a medical doctor and one's a pharmacist, and they both had their hair had gone white by their mid-30s. So you know my so I had a lot of genetics going against me as well. MTHFR, all sorts of things, the choline pathway for fatty liver and whatever else. And so, but still, I've been able to reverse a lot of things by having a species appropriate diet. So I think it actually works in the end, and it's good, and it doesn't. And remember, most people, even the ones that actually live longer, they're actually, even though they're consuming some carbohydrate, they're actually consuming primarily pork. Sardinians, the Costa Ricans, it's either fish or pork. The Costa Ricans, the Greeks, in I'm trying to remember the damn island now. I can't remember. And the Okinawans, a lot of pork is consumed, and pork is high in B1, which thiamine, which is really important for a lot of the metabolism of those foods. Plus, it's really low in insulinogenic effects. So the Randall cycle, even though you're having some carbs, is less pronounced. So that's an effect. Now, if they were eating basically beef and all those vegetables, because of the higher leucine content, there would have been a much higher effect of the Randall cycle, more like we would get with people in the 50s and 60s that were consuming and doing some physical activity. So they were depleting some of that as glycogen. So, that's a factor in it. I mean, they're quite physically active, these people. They don't sit around doing nothing. They're not couch potatoes. You just have to see the old people. They are always around on the land, doing things and all that. So you're depleting glycogen in that regard. So it's really important to nuance that. But in terms of longevity, it's really not pushing up the growth pathways continuously. And I don't care if you're on a whatever diet. You're not going to get longevity with a carnivore diet. It's a myth if you believe that. But you will get longevity and good health. You will get good health from a carnivore diet, and you will get good longevity from autophagy, because that's, from enhancing that pathway by fasting now and then. It just makes it easier when you're on a low carb, ketogenic, but even a highly catabolic vegan diet, it's sort of like a fasting mimicking. The only problem is it wrecks your gut. It's nutritionally devoid of sufficient nutrients to support your body. So you're in a constant catabolic state. So you just waste away over time and get really sick from deficiencies. So it doesn't work, in the long run. But, so the difference is when these populations consumed, like, if you look at the Okinawans and all that, they're quite short. So they don't need a lot of animal products. So with smaller amount of animal products and, remember what I said last time, you got to approach ignore the RDIs. You've got to think in terms of the energetics of the animal. So how big is the animal? That will affect basically what are the nutrient requirements of that animal. That's how veterinarians look at it. They actually look at the size of the animal and supplement appropriately. We have to do the same thing with humans. If you're a big person, you need far more nutrients than somebody that's shorter. That's why these populations, shorter populations, actually live longer as well, because they have, over time, because they've had a lot of starvation, a lot of less food availability in their diet, they've tended the mTOR pathway, the IGF-1 pathway tends to be slightly downregulated. It's a bit like that population in South America that some of the US researchers sort of came across, that basically, they could smoke, drink, do anything. They wouldn't get cancer. They wouldn't get, because basically they had this defect in the IGF pathway gene. So basically, they could do all these without getting all the anabolic effects, the severe anabolic effects. So they still got fat because, they still engaged the Randall cycle, but they didn't get the high effects of those pushing those anabolic pathways. So, but that's for the majority of the population, that is an unnatural condition where you wouldn't, these things go in lockstep with nutrients because they're all nutrient sensing sort of, hormones and pathways, growth pathways. So, it's really getting back to the pulsatile effect. Longevity comes from restricting food or having food. And something that Troy actually said something today on Bart's thing, and I sort of agreed with him, and Bart sort of agreed with me as well, and Troy, that basically, and even Richard said he does the same thing, which is basically exercising, then eating, then fasting. And there's a lot of logic to that because you're tearing down tissue by exercising in a fasted sort of state, then you're eating, and so you're rebuilding tissue. So I usually say take a break for about a half an hour to 1 hour before eating, heavily. Sort of come into it in that regard, and then basically fasting again will basically allow you to go through this pulsatile effect that I've been talking for ages since I've been on Bart's chats now and then. That pulsatile effect is really important because it basically means that you're resting the body to heal, because fasting is about healing, from all the actual oxidative phosphorylation. Because when you engage growth factors to build tissue and all that, you're actually building up gunk in your cells. That's what you're doing. And then you want to clear that out, And if you think about it, the Icarian people, that's right, in Icaria, Greece, they tend to also be very religious, some of these islanders. I know it because, I've had to deal with them anyway. It's a different story. I won't go into that. But they tend to be far more religious than us mainlanders, but they live longer because they fast more. They stick religiously strict to the 200 days of fasting throughout the year. And so they have this pulsatile effect. Mm-hmm. And even the monks, some of the monks will actually abstain completely from food because it's a luxury, it's an indulgence. They see it, and it keeps them further away from God in their eyes. And so they will go into a much deeper sort of autophagy and fasting. And you see them, these old blokes, into old age because of that fasting. So it's really important to understand, let alone they eat proper real food when they're eating food. They grow their own, they fish and stuff like that, and they've got their own animals and use dairy and stuff like that. And they eat plenty of, meats as well. So they've got a lot of animals, which herding animals around their monasteries. So, but, this sort of fasting and feasting, sort of, which is a tradition. But most populations had the tradition. The Okinawans had the tradition. If you look throughout the whole of history, populations had those traditions. And, the longevity populations around the world were the ones that had those strongest traditions. Like the Okinawans, eat until you're 80% full. Don't overeat. And we know now, even, something recently, that Bart pointed out about the Randall cycle, which is really important. I talk about the gradients of the Randall cycle. But one thing that he pointed out is that once you get over the sort of level where your body can actually utilize that energy, that's when you start getting into trouble. So, even though you've got this gradient, it really engages once you hit that threshold. And that's right, what he's saying. So the Okinawans to basically say eat until you're 80% full is really sort of sitting just below that continuously. And so that has a positive effect on them. They don't overindulge, stuff their face, so to speak. So that's really important for people to realize, stop stuffing your face, probably live longer. Now, let's get into some of the questions, because we're probably going to have fallen behind. Like if you're our father, I feel jealous already that he's got more black hair than me. Well, what can you do? Yeah, at least, I mean, one thing about, if I look at my skin and even, like wrinkles, they've all sort of vanished. You can see that. Can you actually see that, Jared?
Yep.
That I've got no wrinkles there?
I can, yeah, it looks the same as your cheek.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Where I had more wrinkles in the past, a lot of that's sort of gone with the fat soluble vitamins. So, it's, and a few other things, but I won't get into that. That'll be for another show, some other time for more information. That's a video to be made on how to improve your skin. But, so the thing is, if I look at my life the way I treated it up until about a decade ago, so it was quite severe. And I can't put it all on the carnivore diet. That'd be wrong. It's just generally a low carbohydrate diet of one sort or another, paleo, then keto, then paleo, then low carb, eventually carnivore. So it's all those sort of things in between. But even though I was doing all those diets, I was still doing a sort of a nose to tail approach and all that, because that's in our tradition. I mean, I've been eating liver for years and I love liver. So it's not as if it's something that I newly discovered, so to speak, on the internet. It's just basically, that's why I dub mine a Mediterranean or Greek style Mediterranean carnivore diet, because it includes seafood, nose to tail, eggs, mullocks, which is, like mussels and oysters and stuff like that, snails and all these other type of foods that most people in the carnivore community don't even touch or don't even discuss or are not even interested in at all in any way. So, but the difference is I ate like that, but I included plants in my past diets. All I've done is when I came to the carnivore diet, I still eat the same foods. I haven't really changed my diet. All I've done is excluded things.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was doing paleo, I excluded dairy to my detriment, which gave me kidney stones because of basically, and also when I was doing keto, I did sort of like a paleo keto, which also, that those 5 years were, wrong, not enough dairy, not enough calcium to bind that oxalate. So I got myself into a bit of trouble there. But outside that sort of thing, it's really, the diet hasn't really changed what I've been eating. It's just basically I jettisoned the plants as an unnecessary component. And I probably added more in the last probably 5 years. I've added more fasting compared to the previous 4 years, as I was transitioning. I mean, it's over 10 years, but the first year was still, I was learning. I just came out of surgery, was shell-shocked, so to speak, as you can understand. And I was on a statin and doing a whole lot of things that, luckily, I had a better diet because I got onto my father's sort of Mediterranean diet, high-fat Mediterranean diet. So that was one benefit in that first year. I also supplemented heavily with coenzyme Q10 in the reduced form, ubiquinol, so to cover the statin side of things. So I did check the side effects. I wasn't completely ignorant about some of the side effects of these medications. One thing that I didn't know about was about aspirin, how it can be so much damaging to your lungs. So that was a sort of a revelation after about 2 years or 3 years. But initially, I didn't give it up completely. I was sort of occasionally taking it, occasionally, you know what I mean? I was on, off. I was sort of my mind wasn't completely convinced one way or another. It took much longer with the the aspirin to sort of get that out of my head, and sort of realize I could use other strategies to basically to deal with fibrinogen in my blood, which is the clotting factors. So, so that was a sort of that took a bit longer, probably more out of fear than anything else. Got to be honest, we're
So
humans, we
you say
fear.
aspirin can be bad for your lungs?
Yep, it's not good.
What's the mechanism there? I haven't heard of that.
The hairline structures actually get paralyzed. The little hairline structures, I forget what their name is.
The cilia?
That's it. And they actually can get paralyzed. So the willow bark actually doesn't cause that. It's something in the modification they've actually done to the aspirin. It's a long time since I've read it. I can't remember the exact mechanism, but it actually has this paralyzing effect. And they actually knew about it. Now, it's not severe, the paralyzing effect, but if you're taking it every day and causing some little paralysis each time, that would create sort of respiratory issues over time, And people say it may even have an effect on causing cancer, but I'm not convinced on that one. I think it's just a respiratory problem that it creates and possibly has a more systemic effect on the body from just not getting enough oxygen, which is very unhealthy in itself. But exactly whether it has a direct or indirect effect on other sort of pathology, I've got no idea, and I'm not convinced, because the science isn't convincing. So we've got to be I've got to be careful in that regard. Yep. So doing kind of the same with me. Osma says, used to smoke like a chimney and drank like a sailor. Yeah, me too. Yeah. One of my favorite was vodka. I could drink a whole bottle of vodka in a night. Fuck. God. Let alone beers and all sorts of other things. So yeah, I was quite, and I don't get drunk easily because of those detoxification pathways. I can clear out at 4 times faster the alcohol and caffeine as well, because the same pathway works along the same pathway. So it basically means that and that's one reason why I was always the last person standing nearly, because the only other person that could actually drink me under the table is my younger sister. No one else that I've come across yet. She's even worse than me. She used to leave work in the evening and just go and party. The one that was vegetarian, sort of yes, the one that still smokes and had asthma but doesn't have asthma anymore. So, but yes, but she was a party animal. Probably way worse than me. So yes. She was lucky she had the husband, and still has the husband that she has, that puts up with it, because I can tell you, if she was my wife, probably wouldn't have worked out. So yes, let's put it that way. I won't go into any more details or I get myself into trouble. She probably may be listening. Come on and give me a serving. Okay, let's just go. Missionaries did a real number, destroyed cultures, and instilled a deep belief in God. When, look, a lot of these people, their heart was in the right place, but their methods were really bad, because they came from a culture where they thought that their way was superior. And so, it was basically, it's destroy and build something new. And so a lot of, cultural knowledge from these traditional indigenous people was lost, unfortunately, which is, to our whole detriment, because, the more knowledge we lose, because the closer you are to an ancestral lifestyle and diet and all that, the more knowledge you've got about a number of things, So, look, I know, these sort of things like, Natives engaged in blood drinking rituals. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. So Luke mentions about the Brazilian natives engaged in blood drinking rituals. Okay, so just wild fruit and for minerals. Look, the the Maasai bleed their animals for similar things. So there are different ways and all that. You're welcome, mate.
No one's safe.
I should expect something amusing.
No one's safe
That's what he
from
meant.
the wrath / talents of Luke here.
That's it. Plumped out with collagen. That'd be good. Look, I do consume bone broth now and then, but no, I'm not actually the only thing that I do consume probably more than anything else would be chicken broth occasionally, but not much. I actually like if I have chicken, I'll actually eat the ends, of the actual bones because they're soft and you can actually get all that gelatinous material and all that, which is hyaluronic acid and all that. So that's how I get my sort of collagen. It's a lazy way, I know, but and through skins of the animal. So that's how I get most of my collagen in that regard. You don't need a horrendous amount. You do need some. And there are differences between people. Some, probably, at the end of the day, you can get, if you're eating enough meat, you can replete your glycogen stores and you can get sufficient aminos to create the collagen you need in that regard. Yes. What it means is that if you're consuming a bit more of the collagen or skin or stuff like that or connective tissue around bone, you probably need, your body will convert less. So, and because you need some of the cofactors, the micronutrients, you probably end up requiring less because of a consequence. So it's not really, that you can't get enough. And so that's why there's, these constant arguments in the carnivore community about, do we need collagen or don't we? You've got Paul on the one hand with Frank saying you do. And then you've got people like Bart, Sean, and others that basically say, well, if you get enough meat, you don't. And both are to some degree right, in that regard. But at the end of the day, there are going to be some variations amongst people with different SNPs and stuff like that may mean that they may need. But at the end of the day, fundamentally, what you really need is the sort of collagen, sort of those fat-soluble vitamins. They're actually involved in all the collagen genetics. So the genes that basically do all the transcription, all those, because transcription basically means, through RNA transcription, actually just producing a whole lot of proteins, and those proteins, those little, yes, Luke, those little nano machines, those little protein machines that go around, they have their cofactors, which are the micronutrients. And so basically, if you don't have enough of those, you can throw down as many. So let's say you are only eating powdered protein and powdered collagen without any of the fat soluble vitamins and all that, the other stuff, without fresh meat to give you some of the vitamin C and all that. Would that work? No. So you got to think it's real food. At the end of the day, it's real food that is going to basically provide, the ability for your body to do the transcriptions, to do the processes, to operate all those mechanisms that are required to synthesize these things, to create these things, to build and tear down when you're fasting and rebuild and all that. So as long as you're doing something like that, you're pretty safe in that regard. Most people, I find that I agree. Honest, bone broth can be like Botox and less painful, I suspect. Not that look, I get injected now and then for like vaccinations, and that doesn't affect me in that regard, especially if I'm going to some country where there may be some sort of outbreak and I need to cover myself. I have done that in the past, if there's a vaccine for it. Hoping now they get one for the corona one. One can only hope.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. So Luke's going around spreading my carnivore principles. Yeah. Well, they're just sensible. It's a sensible way of eating, basically. That, a lot of people go, I hear a lot of people, they say about, I've got these issues, or too much, uric acid. Well, are you salting enough? Salt brings down uric acid. 1, 2, it lowers cortisol. So are you doing these sort of things? Then you've got calcium that can balance a whole lot of other things, from going too high in the body. So in that regard, are you getting the proper nutrition in that regard? So whether you're getting it from bones or you're getting it from milk, then also, Carnivore Yoga, she actually was talking recently about how she was having a lot of issues, fluctuations in, like she was, peeing all the time. And the only time I peed was when I was actually going into ketosis and basically, losing a lot of water weight. Mm-hmm. That's the only time I remember, where she's actually recently been peeing like mad, constantly, which really, and having certain signs that some kidney issue or whatever. And I've said to her, I've looked at that and not said to her directly, but, have commented elsewhere that basically, are you getting enough, raw milk in there? Because, raw milk is low in sodium and quite high in potassium. So if you're not getting enough potassium, are you consuming raw milk? So you can have like a steak, for instance, and she's not a big sized person, so she'd probably only need, with her energetics, because it's 1.8 per, the sort of, this is in terms of the caloric requirement and all that somebody would have at her sort of size. I'm guessing about 2,500 milligrams. I'm just vaguely sort of looking at the what her size is. I may be wrong. Sorry, I'm using a veterinary approach, and like mine, my requirements are about 2,100. That's what my requirements are. My actual requirements, per day. If I had a big steak and have basically 2 glasses of milk, which I usually have, I've got about slightly over 2,100 of potassium a day. So I get what I need from the food in that regard. I don't need to go and supplement and do other shit like that, which can cause all sorts of imbalances and dysregulation. Yeah. The problem is when you use a lot of these sort of supplements, you tend to basically cause a lot of, grief to you, because they're just out of whack, a lot of the stuff. Get it from your food. Look at the food sources. If you're not doing bone broths to get some of these minerals like, calcium and stuff like that, or grinding bones or stuff like that, and you've got no problems with dairy, use dairy as your other option. Milk in particular, or basically even cheese. So like different cheeses have different levels, so you sort of have to do a bit of an investigation and see which levels and sort of which you want to prioritize, because sometimes people just want to eat so many calories. They don't want to eat more calories. So go and check and see. Let me just find that location. I'll actually just quickly just show you this location. Let me just find it first of all. It's not a bad site. It's got some junk on it. It's not a perfect site. Let me just share this on the screen. So this is it. It's called self nutrition data. And so you can actually check either one single item, and it's got all the different variations of eggs as an example. This is just an example. So you can do a search on every single variation of eggs and look at their nutritional value. I'll just give you a sort of a duck eggs as an example. It's just the first one there. Why is this? Oops. I think that's fixed it. Sorry about that. Bit of a glitch there in the matrix. So you can actually get all sorts of information on, like I always look at 100 grams. If people in North America want to look at ounces, they can look at ounces, and they can get all sorts of information on, the carbohydrate, the fatty acids. Now, these are all based on, like, for instance, that would be, basically butyrate, short. These are short chain fatty acids. You've got your medium, your mediums, so, oops. And then, your longer ones and all that, and very long ones down here. So, but you get quite a bit of information about, what's in them, minerals, how much potassium, stuff like that. But the other thing you can actually do under the tools, nutrient search tool. So you can go under here. Wouldn't bother with the calorie one so much, because you look at nutrient density. So I usually, I look at 100 gram serving, which is basically close to about 4 ounces. And then you can actually just go through and look at any of this sort of stuff in that regard. And, let's just, you can actually look at folate or folic acid or dietary folate equivalent. So they've actually broken it down into a number of things. Like the E vitamin, vitamin E, they've broken that down as well. So if you're looking at specific types in that regard, unfortunately they haven't broken down the vitamin K, which really annoys me. I wish they had, but they haven't. So if we look at the, like calcium, you can do a bit of a search. You can actually pick which category you want a food. So you can just pick specific foods, but you can actually, you'll get all these different types, for instance, and, the sort of baking stuff, sort of spices. But remember, with a lot of these like plants and stuff like that, the bioavailability, remember the anti-nutrients, keep that in mind. So I'd ignore that sort of stuff just because it says something here. It may not be bioavailable, but you can actually then check the different categories of food and actually get an idea. Obviously, dairy and eggs are going to be the main ones for us. And you can actually get, even look at dried whey, 100, 4 ounces. Look at the amount of calcium. You're getting double what you need. You know what I mean? Just from a supplement in that regard. So there are other sources and all that, certain cheeses and stuff like that. So there are different options for people to pick and choose, whether it's calcium, whether it's, going back to the original one, which was, I'll go to, So, the original one we were looking, and potassium. This is what people used to use as an agent, cream of tartar. You can actually buy cream of tartar. It's extremely high, and so let's say you're making yourself sort of a dairy fix, and you're quite depleted in potassium. You can look at that and work out exactly how much, but you need to know exactly where you are. And you need to basically do that dosage over a number of days. So small amounts to build up, to get those levels, but not exceeding the levels where it's dangerous. You've got to be careful with these things. I mean, you can use them for a short amount of time to correct something like a potassium deficiency without basically taking certain things that are going to cause more problems. I mean, even instant coffee, look, has quite a bit per 100. Obviously, you're not going to take 100. If you took that much coffee, there'd be a lot of. Let's say you wouldn't get to sleep for a couple of days, possibly. So that wouldn't be advisable. But you can actually see you can mix and match a number of things, foods and stuff like that, and try and actually get those levels to good levels. Based on your level of energetics in that regard, so which is really important. So I was trying to remember what it was. Yep. Oops. That's not good. It's not flickering. I don't know why. Sometimes when I overlay things, that they can flicker a bit. So look at, let's say your caloric requirements are. This isn't what your caloric requirements are. Okay, you need to find out that for your own body. This is just general because most people use the 2,000 for whatever reason. It's not for everyone. You wouldn't give a child that amount, and you wouldn't give an old person. Depends on your size and all that. Anyway, so looking at 1.5, so we're looking at about 3,000 is what somebody would require on somebody that's actually at that caloric, not 4,700 milligrams, which is what usually the RDAs say that you should have. That's just you don't need that level of potassium. Somebody that's on a 2,000 calorie diet only needs 3,000. Somebody that's slightly lower will need slightly less in that regard. Some people say it should be 1.8. Look, the reason why they banned potassium supplements in the open market, like in Australia and a number of other countries, is because you're at greater risk from having too much potassium rather than too little. So it could be quite dangerous. You could end up having cardiac arrest. So I sort of don't go for the 1.8 in terms of energetics. I sort of temper it back to 1.5, which is what I consider a safe zone. So based on if your calorie requirements for to maintain your body mass, as an example, is 1,500 calories. As an example, 1.5. That's all you need in terms of potassium. So you need far less, and a steak and a couple of glasses, it's the sort of myself, a couple of glasses of milk and I'm fine. I'm done. I've got my potassium that I need. Sometimes I get slightly more, but that's, it's still in food bound, which basically means the body can regulate it properly. When you give it into a supplement in large doses and stuff like that, the body just can't manage that in an efficient way. It's just overloading the system, and it's much more riskier. So don't take risks, guys, with your life. So use this as a source to basically work out the foods and your requirements. So work out what your calories are, and then use a 1.5, work out what your potassium levels should be around, and sort of aim for that, whether you hit slightly above or slightly below. Don't get too wound up about it. So there's a bit of information about potassium, just to avoid any, problems and stuff like that. And, please don't take risks. Don't go crazy on cream of tartar or stuff like that. Please, don't put yourself at risk. You know what I mean? Far better to have more sodium than potassium in the system. So keep that in mind. We were born in ocean water, which is sodium and calcium rich. We weren't born in potassium rich ocean waters. So remember, the sodium potassium pumps on, the potassium's in the cell, not in the actual bloodstream. So let's not overload our bloodstream with potassium. Okay, keep that in mind. Keep it within the natural level, and the body will basically take that from the food and use it, or will dump it, urinate it out, and get rid of any excess. And so, don't overload the body. Don't overload your kidneys, especially when you've got like she's got a mild kidney issue. And I think she said she was basically sort of supplementing on that. And I was really concerned. I was going, should you be doing that? Try and get it from your food, first of all. And if you're not getting it from food, why aren't you? And now let's just go down. Yep, it is for leg cramps. Potassium, it's not only, potassium also helps with leg cramps and stuff like that. It's not only magnesium. So, a sort of a bone mineral or bone broth. Very important to get those additional minerals. Good. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I don't have a good source on mussels or crab. I'd have to go to the coast for crab, and the mussels around here you can get like jarred mussels, and
Okay.
they weren't good last time I tried them. Although I find just bivalves in general are tricky to get good quality, for me anyway.
Yes, I'm getting a croaky voice. Sorry about that. Just give me a sec. Back in a sec.
I can't control the stream, so I can't put questions on screen. I'm hesitant to answer questions because then they'll be answered when he gets to them later.
Just need to get some of that mucus out, building up.
Yeah, I'm hesitant about the quality of frozen clams or mussels, necro-kitty, with the issue being that the waters that they're harvested from, they can retain heavy metals and contaminants.
For fuck's sake. Damn. Didn't think it was going to be this bad, but
At least it's the weekend.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They do basically. Yeah, it's just nonsense. Danny also pushes. I actually saw his recent live stream, and I sent Bart an email and let him know, and he got on, and I said, "Well, why don't you debate Bart?" And he wouldn't. And as Bart pointed out, he basically had a lot. He's good at just reading a whole lot of things and spewing out this sort of stuff, but not arguing the points or nuancing the points. So it's just basically a mouthpiece for Ray Pete and people like that. So, from what I've realised. So, yeah, he's got some interesting stuff. Who doesn't? But, yeah, he's just a mouthpiece. I'd tear him up in a small amount of time. Well, Willow Bark's much better. But you have to be, that's the other thing, the quality of the supplements as well. That can be a problem, like all these sort of stuff. You got to be careful, guys. There's a lot of crap out there, and people are pushing all sorts of stuff, and they have been for a while. I say, well, if you go back, 10,000 years, was any of this available? Nah. The shaman would have gone out and used certain herbs and stuff like that to basically poison you slightly to upregulate glutathione, because you may be weak and not in a position to go out and actually exercise to increase glutathione, through the hermetic effect. So you give somebody some sort of plant toxin, and it induces more glutathione, and sort of the body sort of responds, but just in a small amount, because a lot of the actual natural stuff, you'd boil it and give it, it's in a less concentrated form. Most pharmaceuticals and most of these supplements are in a very concentrated form, and I do have issues with concentration. How much is too much? I fear sometimes we're over poisoning ourselves rather than actually getting any real good benefit. Sometimes all it requires to get better is just rest. Let the body fix itself. So it's been doing it for millions of years. The only time you really need a medical doctor is if you're basically bleeding. You need to stop the bleeding. Or you've got an unusual growth because of an inappropriate diet. You need something cut out.
Urgent care.
That's exactly it. It's urgent critical care. That's when, doctors themselves do really well. I can't, it'd be wrong on my part to basically sit there and say that they're not, in that regard. I have a shot again, which is, that's what I love about StreamYard. It's just
I think doctors are also pretty good at identifying problems, just not solutions.
Yeah. Human Animal about alcohol. How can a problem that can destroy, societies in your brain? Yep. I've probably lost quite a lot of brain cells. Damn, I could have been smarter. Shit. God, then I'd really be a pain in the ass for some people.
I mean, a certain amount of muscle pain is a good thing when you're recovering from exercise. Yeah. I think it'll tend to reduce over time as you continue to exercise as well.
Don't over-exercise is, my point.
Yeah.
Are you doing too much? If you look at tribal societies, they'll go out and do a hunt. They'll come back and they'll just relax and sit around talking to each other. So they'll deplete their glycogen. They'll do their, but they're not out there, they'll occasionally lift and drag things and stuff like that. It's just using all their muscle groups. Ben Ben Greenfield, he does the same thing. He uses all his muscle groups. He goes out there and pushes tires with his family, and it shifts things and stuff like that with his kids and his wife, and that's a good thing. It's not the gym approach. He doesn't use the gym approach, and I think the gym approach of isolated muscle groups and stuff like that is less healthy. And you can actually see a lot of these bodybuilders and all that in old age, they fall apart in many different ways, both due to their diet and some of their exercise practices. Yes, it looks interesting when you do these sort of things and you build these sort of muscles and you can get on stage and look, but, are you interested in that? I don't think the majority are. I couldn't help it. Yeah, magnesium's good, but get it from your food.
Yeah, I think diet has a lot to do with muscle pain after exercising for recovery time as well. I definitely don't get as sore as easily from the same amount of exercise as I did before I changed my diet.
Yep, exactly.
Actually, I have a hard time making myself sore at the gym. I have to go really, really hard for me to be like, for me to feel like I need recovery time afterward is what I mean.
Well, with vitamin C, go and check my video on that. So I've already covered that about how to upregulate the GLUT4 receptors. Chromium, very important. Fresh meat. There's a lot of different foods in that have got. Milk's got vitamin C. Fish roe of differing degrees. I sort of don't rely on fish roe. Fish eggs occasionally. I do have fish eggs because my father used to cook us fish eggs when we were young kids. So, because, I still go fishing and still enjoy fishing, and we use all the animal, and we definitely use the eggs. That's a treat for us. And I love actually cooking them in butter in particular, but in that just lightly, and then having them like semi-raw. But but the thing is, as long as you're having fresh meat, you're not having dried meat, you should be getting enough vitamin C. If you're having foods that are high in, chromium, that should cover you as well. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. Nobody's actually suffering, mate, if I was like one sign that you're actually suffering is basically connective tissue not being proper, and also you basically get more wrinkles as well when you're not getting enough vitamin C. Doesn't seem to be happening to me. So what I'm saying is that when you don't have glucose competing on the receptor, there's more than enough on, and this has to be clear, on things like raw milk. You're not going to get it in pasteurized. It gets all damaged. It gets all lost in the heat process. So raw milk only. You're not going to get it basically in cheese or anything like that. There may be but it'll be so minute. It'll be, you need a microscope to see it. I'm just kidding. It's even smaller than that. But really focus on 2 glasses of milk. You'll get basically about 10 milligrams. So you'll get more than you need on a carnivore diet, especially when you don't have competition at the receptor site, at the GLUT4 receptor in the cell, with, massive amounts of glucose coming in. So, and that's still quite a bit. Just from 2, forget about the meat. You add the meat on top of that, you're probably up to, with a couple of others, up to 15. So you think about 60, that's about a quarter. And you don't even need that. You only need probably about, a tenth of what the RDI is if you're on a carnivore diet. So you're getting substantially more if you eat a number of these sort of foods on a daily basis. So don't overcook your meat, Don't want to be doing that. Mine's pretty anywhere from raw to the most cooked that I will cook my meat is basically medium rare. That's the most cooked, and that usually is accidental, not deliberate. It's sort of accidental where I thought that I hadn't cooked it too much, and sometimes I put on a plate which is slightly warm because I don't want it to get cold, because I'm doing a couple of other things and I'm trying to but that extra heat is sort of allowing it to cook a bit longer, and I've mistimed it, my original cooking, and so end up with it more cooked, and I'm going, oh shit, but it happens. Don't get too wound up about it. Just keep that in mind. So yeah. Don't know. I don't know what your complete diet is. If you're eating, if you're getting too much sugar in your diet from whatever source, even from treats now and then, you're probably causing competition at the GLUT4 receptor at your cell and not getting enough. So it may not be that you're not that you're an outlier, but how do you know? If you check your gums, have you checked is your basically skin drooping? Mine isn't, but is yours drooping or stuff like that? Have you noticed it getting worse? Yep, you could have low grade scurvy. That's a possibility. It doesn't matter what your diet you're on. If you're not basically, if you're overcooking stuff, if vegans get, even though they're eating shitloads of fruit and stuff like that, have been known to get low-grade scurvy, and vegetarians and many others. Remember, most of their foods, unless you're going physically and grabbing the food from the actual plant, ripping it off the plant and eating it right there and then, within half an hour, already 50% is gone. And if it's supermarket stuff, which is in storage and all that, for a couple of months, in some cases, it's not fresh, then you've even lost more. So, most people are getting suboptimal vitamin C on a standard diet or on a vegetarian or vegan diet or whatever because of the food supply. We're not eating naturally. We're not eating seasonally and naturally within the environment and picking things. That's why our food source is important. And if your food source is suboptimal, then you should consider maybe supplementing it. I wouldn't go for a standard supplement because it's just too high to be on a carnivore diet. And you'll end up not using the majority of that and end up just creating a lot of oxalate for yourself. So that's not good for your kidneys. So it's just one, because remember, once it actually has donated an electron, and basically, the body has to clear it out. When it's excess, the body, some glutathione, some of the other pathways can actually recycle vitamin C and vitamin E and add, basically an electron, which basically stabilize it. But if you don't, if you're giving your body too much excess, which it's not going to utilize, and it actually ends up acting, generally, in dealing with other things that glutathione would normally deal with and things like that, as an electron donor, what will happen is basically it will end up in its reduced form as a pro-oxidant, and so the body will actually, try to get it out of the system by turning it into an oxalate. So it's a method of neutralizing its deleterious effects and clearing it out. So you need to keep it, so I would go for like a powder type. You can go, I know some of the alternative stores or specialty stores have like ascorbic acid powder. You can get in a powder form, and so then you can actually measure it to the exact amount you need for your requirements. Don't go crazy, please not. You may have to get some of those measuring, those little, what are they called, the plastic ones that are really small, tiny, that have got the little size because you can't actually measure on a normal scale. It's just too light. So you need the special ones. Anyway. Couldn't help myself. People haven't. Let me just find it. That's from Luke.
Yeah, I saw that in. I think he posted it on Bart K's Discord last week.
Yeah, he did. He did. So, as I said, that was nice of him. So just share that, and yes, so I enjoyed that. A few people got a few laughs out of that. We all age. Honest says, I just want to make it slow and more graceful. Me too. So, and especially I sort of have to, let's say, I've been doing a lot of damage to myself after a number of decades, and sort of now I'm trying to correct a lot of that sort of stuff. I wish I knew how to turn off the genes that are involved in like photo aging. Sort of when I get a lot of my hair goes whiter, grayer in summer compared to winter from that photosensitivity, which I showed you guys the genetics last time. I wish I could find a way of actually, I'm still searching, find a way to actually turn off those genes to silence them. Like you methylate things and you can silence them. I still haven't found a study that actually, if anybody comes across one, please, send it to me, email it to me. I'll love you forever.
Hair dye.
That's it. I wouldn't use that. I'm not that vain, Talking about vain, where the fucking hell is he? He's missing in action today. So, humanimal, one side of my family doesn't seem to age. The other gets faces like Chapel, no matter what they do. I'm walking a line. Okay, you're walking a dangerous line with your family? Is that what you're saying?
Don't know which half you're going to take after if you're aging.
Look, I mean, genetics does play a role, but so does diet, in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what they're on, what they're eating. I mean, I can see that within my own family. I see some family members that have a horrendous diet, and they have, things like acne, like the younger kids, and all sorts of issues. I never had acne as a youngster, but I also consumed a lot of animal products when I was young. As I said, the only indiscretion, the only mistake I made from, when I got back to Australia when I was 18, yes, after I finished my high school in Greece and got back, that was my biggest mistake, was basically going on to seed oils and convincing myself that was the thing to use for everything. And I even I still used olive oil for salads, but that was about it. Everything else was seed oils because the doctors were saying it will lower cholesterol, it will protect me, and I became passionate, when my mate years ago when I was in my 30s, argued for Atkins. I told him he was a wanker and a whole lot of other things. He got the last laugh out of that conversation. He reminds me now and then, the prick, but, he's a close friend. He's like a brother to me, but, he was the one that my stories about. him dragging me on the bike path to do exercise, and probably nearly gave me a heart attack, probably, because I did have an issue which I didn't know about at the time. So yes, but yes, had I listened to him a couple of years earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had to go through that operation. But I mean, we live and learn. Sometimes we have to. The only way of actually learning is through suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That was apparently my way. So Shelley says, I don't mind age. Neither do I, I'll be honest. I want to be disease-free. Me too. I just want to basically live, enjoy life, and then just drop dead.
Yep, live long, drop dead.
Health span. Exactly. That's all I'm interested. That's what my focus is. The reality is there are certain genetics which will affect you in terms of how long you can live. Because at the end of the day, you have to think about it. You've got detoxification pathways. As I said, I've got really good detoxification pathways. Not everybody has. So some people are more sensitive to things like heavy metals, mold, all sorts of things in their environment, and it does them more damage than others. So that's another reason why I say you need to have a genomics understanding, so you can basically then sort of look at minimizing some of these problems, because it's important, I think. I know a lot of people in the carnivore community poo-poo genetics, but I think they're wrong. And the simple reason I think they're wrong is because if you take a look around the world, there is not one population anywhere in the world, or even a tribal society that basically did a pure steak-only diet. Okay? You find me one, just one, that did a pure multi-generational, pure steak diet, and I'll send you $1,000. You won't find one because none exist. So I'm pretty confident on that. So most populations had a number of mixed sources of nutrition, throughout the year. They varied. And they also got a lot of different sources, because you can get mineral imbalances, too much zinc compared to copper. It may take longer, but that can create imbalances. So, I mean, some people have better pathways in terms of some of these, they have lower requirements. Some people have higher requirements, and those people who have higher requirements for these minerals, they're the ones that are going to get into trouble. They usually do, and you hear them constantly on a lot of feeds. They're saying, "Oh, I've got this problem, and it's not resolving," and the people just give them the normal mantra, do the same, and I'm going, well, it's not working. Stop telling them to do the same, because it isn't working, and that's why I say, ancestrally, if you basically, that's why I've never had any deficiency problems, any sort of electrolyte issues, any of these sort of issues that all these people are constantly talking about, for the simple reason, or heart palpitations, or all these sort of issues that people talk about constantly, is because basically, all I've done is I've stuck to the same animal foods that I consumed, a number of mixed foods, and all I did was at the end is just jettison the remaining vegetables, the low glycemic vegetables. That's all I did. So it just was progressively less plants, less plants, less plants, less plants, no plants, sort of approach. So that's why I haven't had any of these issues, no transition issues, no adaptation issues or whatever. It's usually people that are coming from a standard diet to a carnivore diet, a vegan diet to a carnivore diet, a vegetarian diet to a carnivore diet, seem to have a lot of these problems because they've got underlying issues which they haven't resolved. And as I said, steak-only diet won't work for you. It's a bit like, I'm trying to remember the doctor now, Terry Walls. She had MS, quite severe. She couldn't get out of a chair. And she realized that she was massively deficient in a number of minerals, B vitamins, and whatever else. So what did she do? Didn't go for the steak only option. No, she hit the organ meats heavily.
Yeah. She also had a really interesting component to her story too, where she found leafy greens helpful. She
Well, the leafy
was
greens.
convinced it was because of the vitamin K content, and this was on an interview with Paul Saladino recently, where he was kind of debating that maybe K2 would have done her better from
I haven't seen
animal
that
products.
Yet. Yeah, I do know that she actually used for additional supplement, like to get some additional things like folate from, and, for that methylation pathway. And also she wanted, what was the other thing? There was some sort of additional minerals that she sort of, and B vitamins. And she also, from memory, she soaked some of this sort of stuff. Some of the preparation methods were a bit traditional in a sense, some of it. So she did a bit of that. How much? I think, those plants had less to do with it and more the organ meats that are heavy in the nutrition, in all the nutrition that the body needs, in cholesterol heavy and all these sort of things that actually are required to build, to myelinate, your nervous system and stuff like that. Yeah. That's what was missing. And you're not going to get that from plants.
Yeah, she just has an anecdote where she says that if she went more than 36 hours without kale, that it would, her symptoms would return. And that she's uncertain what component she was getting out of the kale that was causing this sort of improvement.
It could be K2, because some people, and this is the funny thing, some people are very good converters of K1 to menaquinone 4, really good converters, in that regard. And so they get a massive benefit when they're actually having green leafy vegetables and all that, and getting that. But she could have basically, because she's sort of like, she jettisoned all the like eggs and dairy and stuff like that, and she was more paleo style. She sort of poo-pooed dairy and eggs, in particular dairy. And so obviously without dairy, you can't get menaquinone 4. Do you know what I mean? Her diet would be insufficient unless you eat massive amounts of organ meats, which she wasn't. So that's the other side of it. And so I think it was that. But you know what? There is a third of the population that can't do this conversion really well. And like with menaquinone 7, there's a third of the population that can't do it at all. That means like menaquinone 7 to go down, and people in between have got different levels. This is another reason why you get high resident time of menaquinone 7, which is what's in the supplements. That's why I think they're crap, And Thomas Stellara, he recently was talking about and saying, oh, how great, that MK7 is more important. I'm going, no, it isn't. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. Because basically a third of the population can't even freaking convert MK7 to MK4.
What was his basis for saying it was better?
Because it was more available in the blood. Well, that's actually not a good thing.
Yeah.
When things are circulating in the blood, it's not a good thing. If it's not being used by the body, it's a bad thing. It can actually have deleterious effects. It's like anything that circulates for too long and it's not stored or used. The blood isn't there to have all these things just sitting around going, oh, when am I going to be used?
Right.
They need to be either stored, secreted, or whatever. So, it's just, again, this reductionist nonsense that, more, if little is great, more is even better. No, it has to be utilized. And that's the one thing about menaquinone 4. It's the natural animal form, and it just gets sucked in by every single cell. When you actually look at organ meats and you actually look at what type they have, it's MK4. And it's in high amounts in organ meats. That means they are sucking it in like there's no tomorrow. So that's what you need to eat to get that, to get it. But if you're a good converter, she basically because sometimes, as I say to people, I've actually recommended in the past people to supplement with MK4, as you've heard me saying, because sometimes people are so depleted in MK4, you're not going to get enough from the animal organ meats. So by her having the capacity to convert more, she was basically like a good K1 to K2 converter that she must be. That's where she was getting the benefit. So it wasn't the kale. It was just basically that she didn't have sufficient MK4 to heal herself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the issue, because MK4 is even, plays so many important roles in the liver, everywhere, ubiquitously in the brain and everywhere else. It actually, some people say it actually plays, well, there are some researchers that actually believe that MK4 is even more important, well, retinol is very important, that MK4 is slightly more important when it comes to the brain as well. So, I would say that's probably where the benefit comes from. But again, if I haven't seen her genetics, you could say I'm speculating, and that's true because I've got no proof. All I know is from the studies that actually show that MK4 is ubiquitous in all organs and stuff like that, and is, utilized by the body in large amounts. So that's the only thing I can base it on. So it wasn't, it was just basically her good conversion. So that's where she was getting that effect. Now I need to. So, Chili Doug, you actually put extra collagen gelatin in my homemade broth and texture. Look, actually, I've done that as well. I've used gelatin to, sprinkle gelatin in my bone broth. I've used it in smoothies, like the protein smoothies in the past. So yeah, it's not too bad to utilize that. But as I said, depends on how much, sometimes I will use like gelatin if I'm too lazy to eat too much meat. So I have my moments when I'm saying, I'm probably not getting enough, and maybe I need a bit more of that glycine in there. That's, yeah. But I'm a pretty good converter for a lot of these aminos, so I don't really have much of a problem. And the other thing is I do supplement. L-taurine, and this is a pharmaceutical grade, which is good quality. So, really important. So taurine is the most abundant amino acid found in the body. Bloody hell it is. And very important for transporting protein, aminos. It's a amino transporter, and a whole lot of other functions in there, which this isn't the appropriate time to discuss taurine, but very important. And as we get over, especially over 40, it declines, and then after 65, it declines rapidly. So your ability to synthesis endogenously. So do supplement, please, especially to avoid sarcopenia in older age. You need more protein, and you need taurine as well to protect yourself against that. So keep that in mind. It's one thing a lot of bodybuilders do right about taurine. Consume quite a bit of it. Shelley F, I pee a lot when I get too much salt and not enough potassium. Yeah, that's that can happen, and it can happen the other way around as well with too much potassium and very little sodium. You can get these electrolyte imbalances, all sorts of havoc happening in your body, because you need sodium to retain potassium as well. Too little and low insulin, you will dump a lot of potassium as well. So your body's trying to get to homeostasis, and that's what's happening with urination. It's, the body trying to adjust to homeostasis. Mm-hmm. So it's not doing something stupid. It's a smart thing. It knows what it's doing. It's been doing it through evolution for a very long time. It's just basically we are dumb apes, and we sometimes stuff it up when we do inappropriate things. All of us, including me, And if you look at my past history, I was one of the biggest, dumbest fucking apes on the planet. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Do we like Luke's icons, his gradients, that he uses and all that? He's changed it a bit.
Yes.
The only thing, the only thing, I'm not sure whether it's like, what was that? What was the liquid? The liquid Terminator that actually, because that's exactly like the way he's actually done me slightly with that sort of liquid type Terminator.
Right.
So yeah, that was good. Yeah, he forgot to add the implements, the fighting implements. I mean,
was it just the T-2000 or something like that?
It could have been. It could have been. Hold on, no. I can't remember now. It could have been the T-2000 could have been the first, liquid metal type.
T-1000? It was T-1000.
No, the T-1000 is the original.
No, it's the T-800 is the original. I'm just looking at Google.
Okay. You corrected me. Thanks. So the T-2000 must be the other one.
To get this right of all things.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. God, I'm going to get blasted in the comments.
This is what I'm here for. I may not have much to say tonight, but I know Terminator, apparently.
He doesn't know his Terminator stuff.
How can we trust anything you have to say about nutrition?
Exactly. Yeah, ignore the whole lot. It's all junk. I don't know my Terminator stuff, and
I bet you Vegan Gains knows which Terminator is which.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I just lost against Vegan Gains. God. I'm distraught. Won't know how to sleep tonight. What? Was just white to black before. Huh? Now it's the colors, the color schemes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, the gradient.
Speaking of sleep, I think I'll have another half hour or so in me, and I need to get to bed a little earlier tonight. I didn't sleep very well last night.
Not a problem. I'll remain here entertaining them for a bit longer until my throat gives up. So, Humanimal, I'm going to go into the supermarket and video the aisles of packaging. It's disgusting. Disgusts me. The waste. It's mainly vegan or BS healthy. A couple of this, one of those, and it's so wasteful. Carnivore is not, and that's true. I mean, I don't put out my bin for ages because I don't have to. I generate so little waste.
Yep.
I'll just mention one thing. I do use a lot of hand sort of especially now with the corona. Well, not with the corona, but I have a tendency to basically wash my hands when I do anything or stuff like that, and I sort of use a lot of tea towels and stuff like that. My sister goes, God, it may not have a lot of waste from that, but it's definitely got shitloads of tea towels in, paper towels in your bin. I go, yeah, and they give me a hard time, my sister and my mate, about I said, yeah, well, when the corona hits, I'll be the one that survives because I'm far more hygienic than you two.
Hopefully that the hand washing and stuff can make a difference with that.
Exactly. That's what I tell them. But that's where I generate most of my waste. So, yes, I'm not the most environmentally friendly human.
I hardly have any food packaging waste.
There's not much, The majority of my bin, when you open up the recycling bin, you look at it and it's just full of the sort of the plastic bottles of my raw milk. It's just, and it's so bloody obvious. Or the sort of containers of of feta cheese or stuff like that. That's that's all that's in my damn fridge. My bins. So I don't generate a lot of waste. It takes me a lot, like I'll put out once every 1.5 months, something like that, sometimes even longer, depends.
Mhm.
So I generate very little, and so my sister's coming around to probably today sometime. So she's going to dump more of a waste into my bin, as she does. She's going away. She's moving to Perth, so she's got a new position in Western Australia, so she's moving over there. So she's basically clearing out a house and all that, and selling things off and dumping, garbage into bins like mine, which are empty. So next week I will have to put it out.
Yeah,
Apparently,
we have an ongoing frustration in our apartment because when it comes time to put the garbage out, it's never hardly any of it is ours. It's the bin is filled every week by the other tenants, and we have maybe a single bag kind of thing.
Yeah, look, that's my experience as well. It's very little that I generate. Yeah, I mean, we are far greater, especially when you're eating like pastured, which is not always easy in North America. I can understand. I can sympathise with people's, if they're in food deserts and places like that, it's difficult. I'm less critical compared to Frank when it comes to that, because you have to take that into consideration. People's financial situation, a lot of factors. So I mean, he actually said on one, somebody told me, and I actually went and saw it because I didn't believe it, and I actually checked it because I actually asked for a timestamp. I actually went and checked it, and he actually said that it would be better to eat plants rather than actually carnivore meat. And I'm going, what the fuck?
No, that's not borne out
That's
by
just
the science on the.
no, it's
No.
not. That's just nonsense. That is just nonsense. But he's gone down this pathway of his aggressive war against the other North American carnivores. He's sort of is eased off from Bart, because he had Bart there for a while, and then he got off. And I'm going, mate, I still like him. Don't get me wrong, and I still subscribe to him and I support him as much as I can. I'm going to send him something, about bodybuilding and stuff like that I came across, an old YouTube site that goes into the original, like even what Arnie did. Exactly, it has old footage of Arnie, his actual diet, what he did and stuff like that. Actual real stuff that bodybuilders did, not the sort of BS today. And even some of the supplements that they use, the original supplement combinations, like they used a lot of like egg and dairy combination supplements, for that high anabolic effect, because, so most people don't know these sort of things about the sort of the original. And I'm out there, so I'm going to give him this information. I haven't done it yet, saying, well, this will help you with your, improving your physique and all that. But the thing is, he's not helping himself, and he's not helping the community from constantly basically this war of words, which doesn't help anything. It just helps the vegtards. That's all it does.
I don't disagree that there's obviously a difference in the micronutrient content and the omega-3 profile of grass-fed beef, but it's foolish just to say that grain-fed is completely
exactly. Even if you look
worthless.
Yeah. Even if you look at the omega-3s to omega-6 ratios, they're not that out of whack.
No, that's something that Diana Rogers, who's doing the Sacred Cow documentary, that's talking about how beef can be good for the environment, basically is trying to push back against a lot of these vegan films like Cowspiracy.
Yep.
She's highlighted that the nutritional reasons to eat grass-fed beef actually are not as strong as environmental or ethical reasons. That there are good reasons to eat grass-fed beef, but that comparing them nutritionally, actually, that we don't have good enough evidence really to say that grass-fed is objectively better. Now, obviously, I think it's reasonable to infer that grass-fed probably is better because that's the animal's natural diet.
That's right.
But just to go on a tirade about it the way Frank does, saying that grain-fed beef is estrogenic and that it's
that's BS. It's like basically a lot of the people that talk about the estrogens. They're so little. They're in nanograms. We produce every day over 50,000 nanograms, per day of estrogen,
Hmm.
and
I think there would,
and women over 600,000, 630 odd thousand. So, the small amount that's present in these meats is so little, it's insignificant, to really make a difference. So it's nonsense. Then the other side of the glyphosate side, which,
yeah,
yep,
that's what I was going to say.
glyphosate is an issue, but that's not an issue either, because there's more glyphosate in North American plants
Yeah,
than
yeah,
what there is in friggin' meat.
yeah. I was just going to
So
say there, if there is a concern with grain-fed beef, it's the potential for pesticide contamination, and even then, at least you're running it through an animal to process some of it away for you. Whereas
precisely,
if you're eating your veggies directly, which is what Frank apparently is saying would be better than
exactly,
grain-fed beef, that makes
precisely.
no sense at all.
It makes absolutely no sense at all. And because, these animals, hold on, they have a liver, don't they?
Mm.
And kidneys. Aren't they the two main detoxification organs in the body? Apparently. So why wouldn't the liver and the kidneys of these animals do the same thing that it does in us? It just doesn't have logic. So no, it does not bioaccumulate. It's definitely not in the meat. You may get a bit in the actual, like the fat of those products, but you won't get substantial to the levels that you get in grains or plants or stuff like that, which is much more concentrated. So yeah, that's just nonsense, and it's just basically another person who's a New Yorker that's a bit more privileged compared to somebody who lives out in in this Midwest or Appalachia or whatever, which is much a poorer person struggling and
Yeah.
has much greater difficulty. And those people, I can sympathise. They're living in food deserts, in very difficult environments with intergenerational poverty.
Hmm.
And for me to sit there and go, "Oh, you should be eating grass fed or eating plants otherwise," I mean, it's just a complete disconnect from reality, from the reality of other people's lives,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
appreciate the nuance that Sean Baker brings to that. That he admits as well that grass-fed probably is better, but that his goal, that his mission for spreading the carnivore diet is to try to help make it as accessible as it can be, to try to help get as many people healthier than they are on a standard diet. I think
Exactly.
that's an important first step. If you make it sound like it's a cliff edge that they can't
Precisely.
surmount to begin with, then they won't try.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get people to feel a little better by eating whatever meat they have access to, then maybe if they can afford better quality meat, they'll realize it's worth it. But you can't just start out saying, yeah, top quality or bust.
No. That's exactly it, Jared. I mean, you got to get them in the door first of all. You're not going to get them in the door by pushing. Most of these people basically have never been exposed to good food information or food culture or whatever. So the general mums and dads out there that have none of this information and are unaware of most of this and so for them, they may see Sean on Joe Rogan, or they may see Paul Saladino on the actual doctors, or they may see somebody that, and they may just get the urge to look a bit beneath the veneer,
Mhm.
and then uncover an entire different world and actually move down a different path. But the thing is, we need to get them, because otherwise the problem is they're exposed to a lot of PC culture nowadays. And that PC culture is turning a lot of these middle class people into what I call snowflake middle class, where they feel guilty
Mhm.
that they have to do something, and so they literally will sacrifice their lives for these sort of so-called goals of being, save the planet, do this or whatever, and because it's all misguided, because they haven't bothered looking beneath the veneer. So people that go out there and try to popularize just generally just meat eating is a good thing, is a first step for a lot of these people. So we can't forget the majority, 99% of the community, because that's who they are. And
Mhm.
you're not going to get them with a pure, lecturing them and saying, you must eat grass fed or otherwise you're bad. Or like the other lunatic in Eastern Europe. You must eat, raw meat, or
Raw.
you are a slave. I mean,
Yeah.
completely disconnected from the reality of the majority of people's lives.
Mhm.
So it's, what do you say? Any other
Yeah, I think.
comments you'd like to?
Well, I think that also highlights value to the simplicity of the approach that Sean Baker advocates for it. That I'm not claiming that an all steak diet is going to be optimal.
No,
But
it's not.
to introduce somebody to it as a concept when they're used to eating a varied diet for their entire lives, to make it that simple as something to try for a month or two. That certainly
Yep,
eating nothing but steak for a few weeks to see how you feel is not dangerous to try. That makes it way more likely that somebody might try it, right? And then once they've done that for a while, they'll probably find that they feel a little better with some organ meats as well.
precisely. Yeah, that's my view. I usually say to people, when I encourage people, like at work or other people around, just to focus on just doing that, and then at a later stage, once they get into it and they really enjoy it and all that, I say, well, why don't you include a couple of other things and
Hmm.
provide variety to your, I use the word variety rather than actually saying, why don't you have organ meats, crustaceans, this. When you use that sort of language, it's sort of that people are going, that sort of stuff. I don't really, you know what I mean? When you say variety, it sort of opens up the
Hmm.
Pandora's box without them realizing it, in a
Yeah.
sense. They go down a different pathway of starting to investigate a bit the food quality themselves, and that's what you need to do. Just motivate people a bit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. So, Shelley F was just talking about Gatorade, sort of package that was keto.
Yeah, keto's
Okay.
definitely keto's gone mainstream. When the number of keto branded snacks and things you can
So,
get off the store
so,
shelves now
so,
is,
so this must be a North American, because I haven't seen anything in Australia.
it's probably just sugar free Gatorade, and they're putting
Okay.
the word keto on it because they're trying to
Okay.
market to more health
Yeah.
conscious people.
Yeah. Probably. Yes. Yes. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, look. Yeah. Exactly. What the fuck?
And I mean,
Yeah.
a drink like Gatorade with supplemental electrolytes could be helpful for somebody starting a keto diet, but I'm not going to claim that Gatorade is an essential part of anybody's nutrition.
No. 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 No.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of nuance to keto that I think that is lost on the mainstream. Like you don't want to just you wouldn't want to make canola oil the source of your fat for keto, for example.
Mm. Well, yeah. That's the problem with a lot of keto type foods. There's a lot of crap out there, which actually uses seed oils.
Mm.
Like a lot of the snacks and stuff like that, and that is dangerous stuff, loaded with deuterium. Not good for your nanomotors. Luke, are you listening?
But it is
Yeah.
interesting to see how far it's come, to see that trend sort of continue. When I started keto, I guess it was 3 years ago, a little more. Um, I had to order MCT oil on Amazon for myself because you couldn't get it anywhere in stores around here. I
Mm,
mean, now I understand it didn't even need MCT oil to do it anyway, but
yes, and I mean that's a lot of people have the same experience. Chili Doug, that yeah, pretty much when you have, I mean, pa- the comparison between pasteurized milk and raw milk, the only difference is the loss of some of the micronutrients. That's basically it, and the lactase enzymes that are there. And so, if you've only got one of the alleles, genetic SNPs, rather than the two of them, then pasteurized milk can be a problem for some people. And the people that have none of them, obviously, it's even harder. Now, some people that have no genetic, but end up using raw milk plus getting proteolytic enzymes that have basically got the lactase in them, they tend to do okay as well. So there is another option, like adding additional enzymes. So that's another option for people that are lactose intolerant. So it's it's just raw milk with additional lactase enzyme. You don't have to get the full spectrum of those enzymes, but the digestive enzymes. But you can get basically just, I think, the single lactase one in some formulations. Yeah, I don't have a specific brand because I've never really looked into it. I know somebody that uses it, but I'm not going to recommend anything. Well, humanity sort of finds the duck eggs are really, they taste disgusting, he says.
I don't know about that. Maybe you didn't get good duck eggs.
Yeah,
maybe you just also don't like them. I don't want to discount your subjective preference.
Yeah,
but
that's right. I mean, who knows?
The flavor of eggs changes drastically based on the feed that the bird gets.
That's true. I mean, I even noticed it because when I shifted from sort of regular free range to a company up in Burnie, the top of Tasmania, they actually have pastured, so they have proper pastured eggs. Them and also there's the Mount. What's the other one? Mount. Can't remember the other mountain where there's another group that actually has also, and they actually have on their video. You can actually look at the animals going around in the pasture through live feed. So that's a different thing, and so that's my options. And they do taste, they're more redder, the yolks, and they have a much nicer taste to them in that regard. From that, and that's a personal thing again for me.
Yeah, we get our eggs from a farm that does proper pastured eggs, at least in the summertime when they can put them outside. But we get our summertime eggs from like a smaller farm who's able to move the chicken pen every single day. And the difference in that versus the other guy that we get our eggs from through the winter who moves his pen I think it's once a week. Even that is extremely noticeable in the flavor of the yolk, especially.
Oh yeah, exactly. It is. Chili Doug, he didn't realise about cream of tartar. I suspect that's the potassium thing. Yep, most people are unaware of. It's but you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful with potassium. Work out. Always remember, work out your requirements for your caloric requirements. So you go to a site where they've got a calorie counter. So you put your age, you put your height, you put your weight, you put all these sort of things, and it gives you a sort of a maintenance type thing, and then times that 1.5, and then work out how much potassium you need, and then look at the foods that you generally eat. Look at on that site. Check the quantities that you're getting on a regular basis, and then if you're going to use cream of tartar to sort of top up, make up the difference, work out exactly how much, and don't go overboard. And you want to basically spread that amount. So you want to look at a couple of days. So I would actually look at 5 days, work out an average, and then work out how much I have to have every day. You don't want to be taking it on one day alone. That will give you palpitations, and that's dangerous. You want to be taking the small amounts to average out that additional stuff that you need for every single day, and no more, and it's best to be under than over with potassium. Don't take the risk, please.
Yeah, it's much different than magnesium, where magnesium you'll get indigestion before you get into any levels that are harmful.
Yeah, you'll either get indigestion or diarrhea.
Yeah.
But it's a giveaway. Once you get diarrhea, you go, oh, I've had too much magnesium, or soft stool. One of the two. It's, as I said, to vegans, the quickest way of actually getting rid of your constipation is basically just taking additional magnesium until you get soft stool.
Yeah, a couple teaspoons of Epsom salt will kick the constipation rate out of anybody, I'm sure.
Definitely. That will do marvelous things. Smelly, but it'll sort things out very fast.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, but people that have recommended that method, I've seen them say that you should actually just take it on the toilet. that
That's
it
it.
works very quickly.
That's what I've heard as well. I haven't tried it myself, but that's what I've heard.
No.
That um, somebody, I can't, somebody actually mentioned it to me. Somebody that actually he heard on the YouTube that somebody did that and actually shit himself or whatever along those lines. But I can't remember who it was. I may have
Oh
to find
no,
that video
it
just
would
for a
be.
joke, for a laugh. So
From what I understand, it'll get everything out of you.
yep,
Just
definitely will.
I've heard of people using it for dysbiosis and different combinations with fasting too to get things out of your gut sooner. And anyway,
As I said, ignore the actual RDA. Please ignore the RDA. And you don't want to be taking those sort of supplements where you can actually get too much. You should be basically getting based on your energetics, your size. Supplements, we should basically be supplementing humans the way we supplement animals. Veterinary science is very accurate on supplementation of animals. Unfortunately, you've got some stupid committee where they've never done because it's illegal to do experiments on humans. I'm going, huh? So that's because of the Second World War sort of a syndrome, as I call it, where we fear. So we only do it on rats, and rats don't have the same biology like us. And so a lot of those results are confounded. I mean, you can't even get a rat into ketosis very easy until you push them above 90%. It's just completely different physiology, completely different enzymes they transcript. There's a lot, there's a lot of differences. It's just nonsense. The only good thing about a rat is, does it die or doesn't it? Whether you use certain pharmaceuticals or other things or other to see what the toxicity level of a mammal is, of that mammal. Even then, it doesn't give you an entire. So you'd go, okay, this will kill a rat. We'll go half as a safety measure, as a maximum. So that's the only purpose of a rat experiment. You don't really get much beyond that. Yep. Got to be careful. And that is true as well. Unless you've got a massive electrolyte imbalance and other issues, you weren't, let's say you went low carb and you dumped a whole lot of sodium out and potassium and other minerals with it, and that's when you can deplete, in that regard at that transition point. But if you're transitioning and you're using sufficient salt, or you use sufficient salt in your diet, it's not going to happen. It will not happen. It's just due to low insulin. Insulin retains sodium, and sodium because it can change the actual pressure differential at the receptor. It can actually keep that potassium from dumping out of the cells. Okay, so it's just the gradient of that pressure is maintained by that homeostasis between sodium and potassium. So but the problem with kidneys is that once your insulin drops, they dump everything, sodium, water, the whole lot. That's why you basically have that water loss when you do that transition initially. Remember, 75% of your ATP is used to recycle sodium. That's how important it is. Remember, our bloodstream is like the ocean water. It's, just think about it. When you go to a hospital, what do they give you? They give you a sodium drip. I mean, if sodium was that dangerous or that bad for you, why are they giving you a sodium drip? That should basically put to your head, go, well, that salt nonsense must be nonsense if these guys are pumping me full of sodium while I'm in hospital. I mean, the disconnect is just, and cognitive dissonance and disconnect is just profound in that regard. You were going to say something, mate?
Oh, just that if I'm concerned about electrolyte balance at all, I would add salt before trying to figure out anything else.
Exactly.
And the same goes just for salting food to taste and these sorts of things too. You may be surprised by how much sodium, how much salt you can take in, and it'll help you feel better.
Mm. And yeah, exactly. In any environment where there's too much heat, you're 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 dehydrating or you're sweating. Exercise as well. You need more sodium, far more sodium.
Yeah, Paul Saladino says up to 5 grams of sodium a day,
Yeah. That's
which would be
basically about
10 grams
10.
of salt.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically what the I'm trying to remember the actual study. That was years ago. I actually remember seeing it a couple of years back, and that was one of the low carb doctors actually showed it in the Low Carb Down Under, which is the Australian site for the ketogenic low carb community in Australia. I've subscribed with them for years, but I can't
Yeah,
remember the actual.
it's one of the best resources globally
It
about
is
low carb for sure. Their YouTube channel is really good too.
exactly, and yeah, as long as you're getting sufficient to basically hold on to those sort of minerals and all that. Yeah, and he's right. I mean, I can't remember the doctor's name. I'm trying to remember. He actually said before refrigeration. It may have been even Dr. Michael Eads. I'm not sure. It could have been. Don't quote me. But he based whoever it was actually mentioned that before refrigeration, salt was used extensively. We were consuming 10 times the salt that we consume today. 10 times. Your kidneys can excrete salt with not a problem. When they've got excessive, they don't actually even have to work hard. Remember, 75% of ATP is used to recycle salt. If you give the body shitloads of salt, you know what it does? It just dumps it. You know the other nice thing about salt? It lowers cortisol. So if you're getting sufficient salt, you're not going to have high cortisol throughout the day, that high stress hormone. That's one reason why people back then, before the age of refrigeration, apparently suffered less stress, I suspect. So salt is an anti-stressor as well. So if you're not getting enough salt and you're too hypo or whatever, maybe you're deficient in something that can suppress cortisol. So keep that in mind. That's one of my go-to in the mornings, salt water. Because cortisol is the highest when you're woken up, and then it comes down by about 11ish. And
Yeah,
that's
I'll often just take a
time when
pinch
you
of
should.
salt directly in my mouth and then rinse it down with water, so I don't have to drink the whole glass to get the salt.
Okay, it's that's another option. Thanks for that. So people should that you don't have to do it like I do it. You can do it like Jared does. People can do it in different ways as long as you're getting the sodium in.
I do also salt my water. I just mean if I feel acutely that I need salt, I'll take it directly in my mouth and then put my water. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever works for you. And I say to people, with salt, there's no risk. As long as you've covered the potassium and magnesium side from good nutrition, and you've already got hints about that site check. Find out how much meat you need, how much milk, blah blah, these combinations and stuff like that. How much other dairy products, and you'll get to your RDI, not the official one, which is nonsense. To your RDI, and once you get to that RDI, then you can basically, you don't have to care about the at all about the sodium levels, because a lot of people don't realize high potassium, low sodium can also raise blood pressure. It's not only low, but low of the other, and also blood pressure can also be affected by, having very little calcium as well. Calcium is all these minerals play a role. So, it's usually, can be a number of factors that can be affected, and the thing that retains water most than anything else is high glucose. 1 gram of glucose retains about 3 times its weight, or 3 to 4 times, depending on the person, depending on genetics, depending on all, sort of about 3.5 times on average of water for the same amount, like a gram, 3.5 on average. Sometimes some people more or less, depending on genetics and a whole lot of other factors. So we're talking about averages here. And that's where you get that puffiness. This is another reason why bodybuilders use to get that puffiness, to get more water in their muscles. So they're more plump, more bigger, so they pop out and they really are bigger in size. They deliberately use insulin in a strategic way to make their muscles look much larger, to hold more water, to retain for that purpose. And it works. They've been doing it for ages. They know how to do it, So, I mean, if they're doing it, shouldn't people put 2 and 2 together and say, oh, and what raises insulin? Oh, should I be doing that to increasing my blood pressure and, my water retention? Not a good idea. And also diluting my electrolytes. People start getting the drift, what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence around there about, all sorts of things. So let's continue down.
Yeah, bodybuilding and health are not necessarily they don't necessarily have a lot of overlap.
That's true.
The goal of bodybuilding is not to be healthy generally.
No. Yeah, a lot of them. It's out there for show. It's out there for basically, winning sort of these competitions. That's fine. I mean, if people want to do that, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, I think Dr. Bergs actually talks about that one, that it has less of an effect, a less laxative effect. I think I heard him once say that ages ago, but it could have been somebody else, but I think it was him, about that type of magnesium supplement. So I suspect that brand Milk of Magnesia is the actual brand, Monk Mode. So NecroKitty's talking about Asian markets. Yes, and frozen clams and mussels and other things. And that's true. They are a great resource. Even in Hobart, I usually go to the Chinese or to some of the other Asian outlets for a number of things that I can't find in the regular places around. Yes, they do have a lot of interesting, let's say, body parts of different animals as well. and so yeah, so they're a good source in that regard. They still, and this is the funny thing, when you hear the veg tarts and all that, what do they tell you? Oh, these Asians, they're eating all this damn rice or all this, and now they're diabetic, but we're going to ignore that. They're eating all this. Well, if you actually look, these people are quite poor. They didn't consume a lot of rice because that is an expensive food to produce. Well, only the richer Chinese could afford a lot of rice. So the poorer Chinese were getting small amounts of rice, had a few chickens and they ate everything of the pork and chicken. The two most popular foods in China are pork and chicken. And the other thing is they also ate some, greens and stuff like that, some other vegetables that they grew in their gardens. So it wasn't all rice that these traditional people consumed, let alone also even for the actual sugar load, which was very low anyway, because a lot of it's low glycemic. But even for that, they had less problems because also, remember, I think I mentioned in the past that the Han Chinese in particular, have ability to endogenously produce choline, to export fat out of the liver, and basically have the capacity to support that methylation cycle also for homocysteine. So even if you're having slightly high homocysteine by sugar-based foods, you can mitigate that if you can endogenously produce more than other people. So it's 76% in Chinese, Han, Northern Europeans, 6%. Substantial difference, guys. Substantial difference. So they can methylate away. That's why the studies on them have no bearing on people from other parts of the world, because Central Asians, Africans, South Americans, North Americans, Europeans, they basically don't have these genetics. So can we bloody get over the Chinese sort of nonsense that the vegetards talk about, because they are ridiculous. But anyway, that was a rant. You're all waiting for my rant here and there. That's one of my favorite rants about the China, like the Campbell sort of China study, and every other piece of shit that demented arsehole came up with, that charlatan. But thank you, NecroKitty, for reminding me about the Asian markets. So Doug's on his on the importance of the raw milks and stuff like that, and Ruteri. That's actually a really good strain.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that. It's one that has a lot of research behind it specifically, whereas others are in combination. So
yeah, exactly. It also helps with sperm as well. Sperm quality and stuff like that. So it's good for men that want to continue breeding.
Okay, I think I'm going to go in 10 minutes at midnight.
Not a problem, mate. You do what you have to do.
Well, midnight for me.
It's nearly there, yes. 3 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So it's still pretty early. That's a good thing, mate. I usually try to get a bit of seafood in a couple of times a week, which is good. Mix it up a bit. It's another one of the laxative side of things. People like the toilet stuff. Well, what's there not to like? Part of the human condition. Oops.
Yeah, I don't think anybody appreciates how important regular bowel function is until it's not there.
Precisely. The thing that I try to remind people is the importance of if you fix the stomach, like the pH of the stomach acid and all that, you fix all your problems, nearly 90% of them, in terms of, because basically you're going to get sufficient acidity to keep E. coli under control, which tries to undermine acidity. You're basically going to make sure that the stomach's working properly and those valves are closing properly and functioning properly. You're going to basically, so it's usually the stomach and the liver, those two, that are very important for the bile as well. And once you get that sort of combination working really well, that's half the problems. That usually most other things settle down. Our biggest problem is because of inappropriate diets, other things that we've done, our livers and our stomachs don't work properly, and that's where a lot of our problems lie. So if we fix those two, it usually actually resolves a lot of issues. And sometimes you may have to basically use like a milk thistle and a high dose MK4 to fix up, because bile synthesis very much requires that MK4. So you may have to take a supplement for that to sort of resolve that. And also to fix up the FXR, that receptor that we've talked about, which has to do with the enzymatic sort of processes that happen in the liver. So, which is very important for the recycling of bile as well. So that's the other part. So you don't get basically the sort of what is called carnivore type diarrhea or low or keto diarrhea or whatever, because it's really a problem with the liver, that you're not recycling the bile properly because you've got a problem there at that receptor, and the enzymes are not, they're just not working properly. You need to repair whatever damage you've caused from past indiscretions with things like milk thistle, and you need also, you may need, depending on how damaged your liver is, and that will depend, you may need to also consider alpha lipoic acid as something to fix the actual organ itself. There are other approaches, but they're very untargeted. It's like the stem cell inducing supplement that Bart sells. He actually sells a supplement there that actually has this, but the problem is you don't know where it's going to get directed. Because the body, let's say you've got two organs which have got problems with them. Let's say it's the heart, and let's say it's the liver. What do you think the body's going to prioritize? The heart.
Right.
If it's, so if it's certain parts of the body, so it may go to the heart and won't. Let's say you've got an eye problem, which Bart has an eye problem. If he had a heart problem as well, it would have prioritized his heart, not his eyes, and he still would have been losing his vision. So, that's the thing. If you've got, you've got a liver problem, you've got a stomach problem, you've got a number of issues, you don't know where it's going to go and where it may get, what is going to be prioritized in that regard. So yes, it's useful. You may have to take it longer to heal a number of things, but get in contact with Bart if you want to get on to that stem cell type therapy approach, because that also can be a useful pathway for some people who are very damaged. Because my sort of approach is like lipoic acid, like a liposomal lipoic acid, things like, betaine, sort of hydrochloric acid, just to generate more hydrochloric acid and stuff like that. They are simple things that anybody can access, through just their normal pharmacy, or, sometimes even in supermarkets, these are things that are available. But when it comes to stuff like, stem cell type activation and, things like that, you probably need to, and you're really damaged. We're talking about people that have got a lot of issues which are intractable. They've tried a number of things that haven't worked, and you may need to look at that pathway. So I would recommend you do a consultancy with Bart, since I don't do any consultancies. As you know, I've got a full-time job and don't have the time to do any. So, I usually direct all my sort of followers to Bart, because he's been a good mate, good supporter, and he knows his shit as well. And he can provide people with other options in that regard. So keep that in mind, guys.
Yeah, I've consulted with Bart a few times. It's very helpful.
Yeah, he knows his stuff, and it's really important that the people that know their stuff, are basically, we approach those people, because I do see a number of people out there in the carnivore community. I'm not going to mention names because I don't. That basically people go to them, they don't get the sort of results that they want, and they're coming back and they're saying, well, you told me to do this and that's not working. And they're sort of, and they're in a live feed or stream and talk and arguing with that person. And yeah, it's sort of good to see Hellman here. And it's really important that that people realize that sort of stuff. So a bit of a rundown on the family. Oops. That's not working. Trying to get something to work. That's probably another one, but that's the problem with damn StreamYard.
I was able to click through that one in the YouTube chat itself. It's very very colorful. I don't mean literally the palette, but it's another new one. Get your Nanomotos checked, me.
I got to get that one. Where am I?
Luke's just creating very specific memes for this group of 20 people that we stream for.
Well, you know what he's like. That's why we love him, because he's colourful. He makes our life colourful.
That's right.
Somebody has to. Anyway, let me go to. Literally have to go to my YouTube live stream to basically access the damn thing. I can't do it within StreamYard.
Yeah, it won't let you click through the link posted in StreamYard. That's odd.
It just is so damn annoying that I can't do that. Oops.
Did you find it?
Yeah, I did. Let me just share it. I've got to share it. That's thanks, mate. Thanks, Luke. That's my new consultancy thing. Get your nanometers checked out.
There was another one that he posted of me just above that one.
Is it? Oh, well, yeah. got to have a bit of fun. Where's yours? Or is it below?
It was above the one with you, or if your chat's not going back far enough, don't worry about it.
Nah. Luke, put it back up. The other one. Give me the other one. Hey. Jared can't have all the laughs.
Oh, there you go. He just posted it.
Oops. Why didn't that work? Try that again. Not working. Oops, he's going to try it again. You gotta love him. He's a classic. He's a damn classic. There's nothing else. Okay.
Okay. I think on that note, I can take my leave.
You've had your laughs.
Yeah. And acknowledged all the hard work.
You've been excited.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate you coming on. I call you a guest, but I should call you a co-host. Yeah. Thanks for your contribution, and thanks for the entertainment side of things as well. I think
thanks for having me as usual. It's a good routine. Yeah. I have pretty quiet Saturday nights usually because my fiance's weekends are Tuesday, Wednesdays. So
fair enough. That's good. You got something to entertain yourself.
That's right.
And we may get Jared at some point in time to actually play some music for us. We may. I'm not pressuring him. That will be a voluntary thing. So we're not here to actually, make it difficult for people. I don't want to scare him off because he may decide, oh shit, So he'll decide when that happens.
Yeah, I can play some music maybe in a couple of weeks. Like I said, I have a little show coming up on March 26th that I'm shaking the rust off for.
Yep.
so I wouldn't want to perform in front of this group just now. But
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
I think
fine.
that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun, and I don't mind promoting what you're doing and all that. So send me some of the info, and I'll put it on my sort of discussion thing and all that sort of stuff. We want to do a bit of a little promotion on here, and I think contact Bart as well. He wouldn't mind as well, So get out there, get people,
Yeah,
interested.
I've thought about looking at what it would take logistically to live stream a little show like that with sound directly from the mics, but
Mm.
I don't have the equipment I would need to do that. So I could still try it just with my phone or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you could try something. I mean, it's not beyond impossibility in that regard. You could give it a go. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, or at least are you getting it recorded? Um,
No, I don't think so. We don't usually.
okay, okay. You got
Yeah.
God. What about your missus? Tell her, give her a camera, get her out there in the crowds. Give her at least a tripod so she doesn't have to hold it all night. So you'd have to, you may have to rent or buy a cheap Chinese tripod.
Yeah. Or just I'll just ask her to stand still for 2.5 hours.
I'd love to see that. Not happening. I don't see it happening.
All right. Well, I am going to go
You
and
can
catch
go.
up on some sleep that I missed last night.
Definitely. Okay. Take care. Thanks, mate, for being a co-host, and I enjoyed your company, and I think most of
Yeah.
my followers did as well. So have a good night. Good. Enjoy your sleep. Hope
Thanks.
the bed bugs don't get you.
No, they freeze to death in the wintertime.
Anyway, see you, mate. Bye.
Till next time.
Definitely. Anyway, all alone again. God, damn. I'll have to find my place. I've lost my place, my spot. Let me just move down through here. Yeah, I agree. Bacon's much better. So Luke talks about kale is terrible. Yeah, it is. I actually tried it once. My father grew it, and I tried it once. And I go, Dad, this is yeah. You know the word shit. So, God, even spinach tastes better, but unfortunately, spinach has far too much oxalate, even more oxalate than basically kale. That's how bad it is. That's an interesting sort of angle, Ozma. Kale is good, bunnies love it, and bunnies are tasty. Okay, so you're at the end of that. I hope that cycle of life from kale to Ozma. Yep, he needs to, Kitty. He needs to. He's not young like us. You have to realize that. He's getting older. He just can't handle the nights. Let's see. So what do we got over here? Hilarious stopped using toothpaste years ago. So Fapnado stopped using it. My teeth have become better than they have ever been. That's true. I actually do occasionally use toothpaste, but it's one of those that is unfluoridated. It doesn't have anything. It sort of just has things like mint in it and stuff like that. Just for a good breath and just clearing away some of the stuff. Also, I don't use a harsh brush because that damages the enamel, the tooth enamel. So you basically want a soft brush, just to get rid of the particulates and all that, food particles and all that. Also use like a mouthwash, like a salt mouthwash, just to flush everything out, and basically also to neutralize, or well, not neutralize, but to lower the amount of acid forming type bacteria, so sort of to regulate them a bit. So yeah, that's basically it. Nothing complicated. And I can tell you, in the days that I basically did brush my teeth profusely with with regular tooth paste and all that, it didn't really help, because there was so much bloody crap going down my throat. So many grains and all that, they did plenty of damage. So Necrokitty's saying American grain-fed beef gives me digestive problems, tummy aches, and irritated. Look, green loose poops. Usually get green poops from a lot of vegetables and stuff like that, or certain things. Green, yeah. Not sure about the poop thing. I've never sort of looked into it heavily. There are things like, if it's red, there's blood, or if you've had beets or something like that, which is like a certain types of pigments in plants, they can end up in your poop and give it a certain color. If you've taken activated charcoal, anybody that has knows their poop becomes very dark and black-like. Yeah, so there can be other things rather than the actual meat. I've never heard of anyone sort of having that sort of poop. So yeah, but yeah, look, some people can have some irritation to certain things. It could be the fatty acid profile. It could be a lot of things. You may not have good conversion of. It could have too much LA, and you may not have good conversion from LA to AA, which is the animal form of omega-6, the arachidonic acid. So you may have and that could be a factor. It could be a lot of things. It could be I'm not saying that it's psychological, but sometimes people, if they have a certain view of certain things when they eat it, it will affect them psychologically far more. So the only way you'd be able to find it is basically if you did a test yourself, like had 2 different meats, and got your friends to basically feed you without you knowing exactly which meat you were actually eating, whether it was pastured or grain-fed, to see what reaction happens, so to eliminate the placebo effect. So that's a bit of a sort of a N of 1 experiment that you could actually do. Yeah. So you've got, Shelley, if basically just eat bacon and butter, that's a nice option, nice combo. There are cases like, Hellman, he actually says that, he doesn't react very well to beef and stuff like that. There are cases, there is, I can't remember what it's called. There is some sort of like a tick that can bite you. And if you get exposed too many times to this tick, you can actually get a sensitivity to red meat. It's rare, but it does happen. And it can take a very long time to desensitize yourself. It's a bit like people trying to desensitize themselves from other foods or other allergens, or things they have to go into hospital or into a special clinic and get into a study or something and sort of desensitize themselves slightly. So yeah, so it's you need to find out more in that regard. Frank claims grain is bound. The grain is bound for animal feed and not towards direct human consumption. What? I think that's wrong. Then they are legally allowed to spray those crops 20 times the amount of glyphosate. As I said, still, it doesn't, it doesn't basically mean, because remember, the animal's still got a liver and kidneys to detox. So you're never going to have the same concentration per 100 grams or 4 ounces of any food. Meat will have less concentration of glyphosate, even the ones that are grain fed. So, no, it's not as big a problem. It is a problem because the actual Monsanto, and now it's Bayer, isn't it? I think the company that actually produces Roundup, or glyphosate as it's called, Roundup in Australia and New Zealand, and it basically has also been registered with the patent office as an antibiotic. So it does cause some gut issues, and that's the problem, because it's like a low-grade antibiotic. So it does cause, some disruption to your gut microbiome. And that's the reason why I would avoid grain-fed meats. But at the same time, as we said earlier, sometimes it's, we're more informed people, crowds. The majority of the population out there aren't. And the reality is they have to be transitioned at a different rate into our community, and not all of them are going to come all the way. So we need to basically get them at least further away from some of these things that are causing most of their health issues. You're not going to eliminate everything. You're not going to save everybody. Unfortunately, it's just a reality. Just the one thing. It's an omega-3 thing. Just get the best. Well, it's not really. I think gut issues probably are due to some of the deleterious effects. There's not enough. Look, the ratios, like with pasture, it's probably 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. And when it comes to, and it depends on the time of the year, because grass at certain times of the year or certain parts or certain elevations has more omega-3, is more hardy, more greener. That thicker green will actually provide higher levels of omega-3 to the meat. But that's a side issue. When it comes to grain fed, it's probably a 1 to 4. So it's much lower, but still not like 20 to 1 like with a standard diet. So even grain, it's not a big omega-3 issue. The other thing is, I'm not convinced by the science, and I'm not convinced by what people say out there, that the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in the low levels we're talking about, not at the high levels. That's a different thing altogether. But at the low levels that most people, in an ancestral diet would have consumed, like low percentages, 5-6% of their diet, where now people are, like 50% of their diet is coming from omega-6s in seed oils, but we're talking about in those lower levels, which would have varied throughout the year. That's not a problem, because arachidonic acid is in every single cell in the body, so it's required, and when you disrupt through your melanopsin, that sort of pathway, you can actually end up dumping arachidonic acid, which isn't a good thing, because it's a very important omega-6 fatty acid that's required in the cell membrane. And, it does a whole lot of things, which would be too long to discuss. So, and it not only supports the pro-inflammatory pathways, but even some anti-inflammatory pathways, arachidonic acid. And even the inflammatory pathways, why would that be a problem? That's just the body requires that as a cofactor for certain immune functions. So are you inflaming your body by doing something inappropriate? Then you're going to activate those pathways. So inflammation isn't a bad thing if it's not chronic. So, that means if it's not chronic, because you're not eating inappropriate things, arachidonic acid isn't going to be used as a pro-inflammatory, but it can be used for a whole lot of other functions. when you actually are using it as a pro-inflammatory to fix it, because the body prioritizes that, then it's not being used for a whole lot of other functions. Then even having a bit more may be a good thing. As you can see, these omega-6 to omega-3 ratios are more to do, again, I need to emphasize this, are more to do going back to the plant sources, because the plant sources are not the animal sources. So they have to be converted. And if you don't have good conversion capacity, because the same conversion pathway that converts La and ALA into AA and DHA, that's where the problem lies. But if you're getting in the animal form as arachidonic acid and DHA, it's not an issue. The body will use what it needs to. So it's and it won't be damaged, because it won't be basically coming out of a factory in a container of seed oil completely damaged. So I think, because if you take a look, if that was the case, pork has got a lot of a lot of arachidonic acid, has got a lot of animal-based omega-6s, but the Okinawans still live longer than many other people around the world. You understand the sort of thing? There's a lot of mythology here when it comes to omega-6 and omega-3s. It's really basically the rancid oils, their deuterium damaging effects to the mitochondria, and also the other dysregulating effects, and also the inability for them to convert. Because people are eating too many inappropriate foods and they're not getting enough DHA and arachidonic acid, because they can't convert the damn thing, because they're eating the wrong sort of foods. They're eating, plant-based foods rather than animal-based foods. That's where the issue lies. It's not, the ratio is less important in the sense if you're getting it from the animals. I have less issues with that. I know a lot of people arc up about that, and I say, well, show me a study. Show me a mechanistic study that actually shows that. None exist. When somebody finds that, a mechanistic study that can actually prove me otherwise, because I can show a whole lot of anecdotal evidence about a whole lot of long-lived populations. So no, it's nonsense. That's another BS thing out there about the omega-6s and omega-3s. The only issue has to do with the plant-based and animal-based. You need animal-based, you're an animal, not plant-based. That's the only issue really there that really makes logical sense. The rest is nonsense. Otherwise, it makes no sense about all these other populations. If those ratios were the big problem, why the fuck are these long-lived populations eating so much bloody pork? Especially like the Okinawans. We start the morning with pork, we finish the day with pork. So yeah, it makes no sense. It's BS. As I say, DHA and arachidonic acid, I love them, both equally, and I don't discriminate between my essential fatty acids from animal sources. At the end of the day, if you think about it, your brain, that third of the brain that actually has PUFA in it, there's more arachidonic acid in there, as it's more than 50%, and DHA is less than 50%. So which do you think is more important in the brain, DHA or arachidonic acid? That's the problem when we have people out there that, because of the pro-inflammatory and all that, inflammatory pathways are important. That's how the body heals itself. It's when when you're in a chronic state or dysregulated from a poor diet, when it becomes a problem. Normal physiological sort of repair mechanisms and inflammatory mechanisms, you heat up the part of the body. What do you put a hot pack to heal? Because you want to heat up the body to accelerate the actual healing. So, there's a lot of nonsense out there, unfortunately, guys, so ignore them. He definitely is, because basically he's promoting plants over animals. Even lower quality animals are better than plants anytime. He's completely wrong on that, and There's not one study that would show otherwise. So, and the amount. And I would challenge him. I'd say basically, you get 100 grams of meat and 100 grams of one of these vegetables, and send it to a laboratory, and you provide the proof that it's actually, because there actually are studies that people have done on the concentration of glyphosate in Europe, and it's in plants, not in animals, to that level. So basically, there's no argument there, as far as I'm concerned. But it's basically again, it's part of his war against some of the other carnivores, and it's just basically becoming too childish in that regard. So unfortunately, he's a good kid. His heart's in the right place, but he's sort of lost his way on this issue in particular. Yep, snowflake middle class. So true, exactly. Exactly. First thing poor families add to their diet, as Luke says, when you earn more money, is animal products. Exactly. Precisely. You look at basically the Chinese in Hong Kong as they've become wealthier, or they eat more meat, and that's why the Hong Kong people are some of the most long-lived people. Most populations, if you take a look, that eat a poor diet of non-animal foods, primarily, of very little animal foods, are very, they die relatively young. And when you look at basically populations that are actually eating, animal products, and that's the difference in Asia, because remember, most of Asia, where people are eating more animal products, and not eating and reducing the amount of plant products, they're actually living healthier and longer. And the reason for that is because they don't have the other confounding factors, seed oils. See, the problem in America is the studies in America, and especially a lot of the actual Western countries, is they're confounded by seed oils. That's the problem. The seed oil component is what actually skews the science, and it brings up these different sort of results, the epidemiological studies, that is. And that's where basically, that you can't account for that. And as a consequence, you got these Asians, like the Hong Kong people, that are eating more meat than the Americans, living longer. And then you've got other Western populations that are eating just as much, but are not living as long as the Hong Kong people. The component that's missing is seed oils that's in Australia, in New Zealand, and countries like that are basically, it's again like myself, I have longevity genes. I was doing a pretty, half reasonable diet. I wasn't completely, if we ignore the smoking and drinking, it wasn't too bad. But the thing is, what are the consequences of the seed oils? Great-grandfather at 107. My grandfather died from pneumonia at 87. So did his brother at 89. Most of my other relatives are in good old age, but with next to no health problems. But my case wasn't the case. Mum's brother, he lived to 93. But he didn't use seed oils. Mum, myself, we heavily used. Mum died at 76. I nearly died at, in my mid-40s, about a decade ago. Yeah, exactly. So believe me, yes, it's, we should not be snobs at all, as Luke says. There's too much in our community, because 99% of the people out there are never going to be basically carnivores, pure carnivores like us. That's not going to happen in any parallel universe. If you believe in them, it's just not going to happen. Shall I have fun facts about me? When my mother was pregnant with me, she craved T-bone steaks. What a woman. That's all I can say. I've been carnivore my whole existence. laugh out loud. Yes, I mean, there are many people. I mean, it's look at the populations like the Maasai, which are highly carnivorous. Titsmani, highly very have very high levels of meat consumption, up to 4 grams per kilo. Some of them. Same thing with the actual the Bushmen of the Kalahari, the Inuit. There's a number of populations, multiple generations. Not an issue. I mean, we can't find one. I've actually said to the veg huts, just one will do. Purely plant-based, multiple generation society. Just give me one. I don't need more than one, just one bloody one. They can't come up with not even half, let alone one. And that tells you everything, that it's just not optimal. I mean, we know it. Most of them fall apart. Yes. Most of them fall apart because basically, it's just, they just can't hack it. Yeah, so Doug, sort of Chili Doug, basically, I eat a lot of canned seafood because it's cheap. There's only a couple of issues with if you haven't seen the video, I can't remember which one it is. I think Pim, either Bart did it with Pim on his, or Pim did it on hers. One of the two. I can't remember which one of the channels it is, but it actually talks about some sort of canned seafood and sort of the risks involved with some of the canning processes. So go and look at that and get some information and find out whether because some of the cans are fine. Some of the traditional methods where they do the traditional cans are problem, but some of them have actually like some sort of plastic type thing inside or whatever, and that can be very dangerous. So yeah, you'd have to find out. Just keep that in mind, because yes, there are some things, but sometimes it'd be better just to basically eat more steak and avoid these sort of canned foods if they're dangerous, because sometimes they're worse than, Pepnado, meat, chocolate, and milkshakes. What else would anyone need? I've done that myself. But in my case, it was meat, chocolate, and ice cream. We had that conversation last week, guys. So Ted Naiman says, eggs are one way to eat, nose to tail. Yep, I agree. And they're very healthy. I've had some cases where, because of the high cholesterol, if I'm sick or things like that, if you want to fix up your gut or things like that, because it's got a lot of collagen in them as well, basically load up on eggs. Eat a number of eggs for a number of days, and very good for healing as well with all that cholesterol in them. So I remember a study of a 88-year-old gentleman back in 96, and he was consuming 25 eggs a day. Let me just see if I can actually locate that. This one is it. Yep. And that was with the New England Journal of Medicine. Let me just share that screen. So basically, he had normal cholesterol, and he consumed 88 eggs a day. Sorry, 25 eggs a day, and he was 88 years old. Yep, sorry. And I usually point this out to the vegetards and all that, and they talk about the method here that they actually use, the results, these different lipids, and they talk about, then they go on, which is a bit crazy. They start talking, that this and that and whatever, the typical excuses why this may be happening and why this person is in complete good health. And then again, his doctor. Let's just go back to the actual case study. So basically he had, some, because he was living in, basically a home and all that. His wife had passed away earlier. And his father died from unknown causes at about 40. His mother died at 76. And some of his other siblings were still around. But the reality is, on average, and his physician had known and attested that he'd been consuming for about 15 years, that he was his doctor. And where was the other guy? He's one of his friends. Oh, yeah, and a friend for even longer. So, I mean, if somebody's basically at, 15 odd years, his mate knew him even longer, he was probably consuming eggs at this rate, 20 to 30 eggs a day. And that was verified, because basically these carers basically brought him his eggs. He demanded his eggs. And so he consumed shitloads of eggs, and as you can see, sort of cholesterol levels, 3.8 to 5.18 millimolars per litre, or 150 to 200. So in the North American vernacular, and that is in the Australian or European type measurements. So usually as low as 150. The 200 mark was more, obviously when his doctor would have seen him, he would have been, sick at the time. So, your LDL does go up. Your general cholesterol does go up because it's used by the immune system. But as you can see, and this is a bit of a biohack that I've actually done, I got my cholesterol down to 3.2. And I basically consumed shitloads of eggs for 4 days. And then on the Friday, I went and gave a blood test and got down to 3.2. And 3.2 is possibly, I think, about 120 odd or whatever. So it's quite low in terms of, total cholesterol. So that's a biohack, and that was one of Dave Feldman's, type of approaches, but slightly varied to his. I did make sure I got enough calories in there, so I wasn't too low, because then the body starts pushing out triglycerides and more cholesterol, circulating. So VLDL gets exported. So you have to have slightly more in terms of calories, just slightly more of what your requirement for the day is, and be a bit sedentary, so you're not basically burning it off and forcing your liver to produce more energy from the adipose tissue, from the fat cells. So yeah, so that's the bit of a biohack. And if you're trying to get a good insurance or whatever, you can actually lower it for the insurance company. That's the only reason I do it, for those arseholes. But as you can see, he's nothing special genetics. His mother died at the same age as my mother, and his father died at even younger age. So in that regard, he was a sedentary person. He probably ate other shit as well. He wasn't completely, healthy in that regard. But the thing is, even though they looked at certain issues that he had, there was nothing major, in that regard. So not an issue, guys, not an issue. In that regard, but that's massive amounts. I mean, God, can you imagine for years upon years consuming so many eggs? every single bloody day. And that also shows you again the other issue that, if omega 6s and omega 3s was so, because remember, eggs have far more arachidonic acid to DHA, and especially if they're, just general supermarket eggs, which they would have been for, the nursing home. They wouldn't have bought high quality pastured eggs. Let's be honest. And you can actually see there that basically, I mean, the rest of his nutrition wasn't that flash, and that's unfortunate. He didn't have enough, more things like more fish in there and other things that he, which would have made his lifestyle a hell of a lot more healthier. But he definitely was, he definitely was, living longer than many other people and even his own parents. So no special genetics either. So, because his parents would have lived longer. If they had special genetics, they would have been able to fight off all sorts of things to live longer. So, you know, I point this out deliberately to show that how nonsensical some of these arguments are, both at the animal level of the omega 6, omega 3 thing, and at the actual at the other side of things, in terms of, he doesn't have perfect genetics. So yeah, and I agree with Ted on this. Yes, definitely eggs are a very good type of food. I usually have about 4 to 6 eggs a day, on a regular basis. Just going to go through and just quickly look as it's getting a bit over time. Just for my clogged inner ear pressure. What? I read I should cut out salt. No. And stop smoking. Probably stop smoking, but I think it's my sinuses. Maybe there could be an issue there. Also, taurine can be an issue. Are you getting any ringing in the ears? Because sometimes ringing in the ears is sort of like a sign of a taurine deficiency. Oops. All that stuff. There's actually a rat study. Don't ask me to find it now. It'll be in a future video, about how they basically reversed ringing in the ears in rats. Anyway. So, yeah. I mean, sometimes there are cases where you may have like something in there, like a blockage, or you may need to go to a specialist and actually get that wax removed or something. Yeah, maybe your sinuses as well could be aggravating it. There could be, you need to investigate it a bit more, in that regard. Yeah, yeah, I've never heard anything about salt ever having such an effect. Yep. The only issue you may have, if you've got high blood pressure, it may be an issue in terms of what are your carbohydrate levels, because if you're using a lot of salt and you're consuming a lot of carbs at the same time, that's a problem. So I know which one I'd give up: the carbs, not the salt. So Jerry says he's been smoking for 50 years. As I said, I don't think the smoking has anything to do with it either. In that regard, there could be a sinus thing. There could be a mucus that can actually build up. You may be reacting to something. You really need to do a go and get yourself checked out and find out whether you're reacting to things. As I said, some people, because I don't know if you're in a rural area and you've basically been affected by certain ticks and stuff like that, and you've got this could be a reaction. There's with symptomatology or symptoms in people. It's very hard to diagnose these things. There can be multiple vectors that are involved. I don't think it's a carnivore diet because I haven't heard anybody having the same effects. It seems more to me like it's like a reaction of some sort, or your body's, not basically reacting properly to certain things. You could take things out and see whether that has an effect and work out through an elimination, fast for a period, then introduce something. If you see a reaction, then you know it's that. If you don't see a reaction, introduce something else that you regularly eat until you basically find the component that basically is causing you the reaction. It's really hard to diagnose. The other thing is you could probably do a consultancy with Bart. He may have come across something similar, dealing with other people, and so may be able to help. It's hard when you haven't come across any specific thing then to look into it. I'll look into it through the week and see whether I come up with anything, but I can't promise you anything. In that regard, if I do, I'll let you know next week. Just ask me the same question and we'll look at it. Oops, overshot. Let me just find my place. I've really, God. Just get it as a supplement. I suspect you're like me. I'm 54 this year, so once we get over 40, we don't produce as much. I mean, it's just a reality. We don't synthesize as much. It goes down. So get a pharmaceutical grade, get a clean one. Where are you located on this planet is the important next question, and then I could potentially point you to a potential resource if I know one in your area. So let me be quite clear about that. No promises on that front. So Chris is asking what my top approach would be combating gout. Yeah, well, it's a hard one because basically, if you don't want to give up fructose and grog, because basically fructose and alcohol tend to dysregulate especially if because you're actually, when you're doing a carnivore diet, you're going to be producing more urea, and as a consequence, when you add the effects of alcohol and fructose, like fruit and stuff like that, you're going to exacerbate the whole issue. Now, the only thing that actually does lower urea is salt. There's nothing else out there that can really dramatically lower it. It's like it lowers cortisol, lowers uric acid. So it has that effect. But how much salt you would need to allow you to do what you want, those indiscretions, plus eliminate the problem, you'd have to experiment. Let us know what you come up with. That's all I can. Think of. Remember to consider the potassium and magnesium side as well, and the calcium side. Very important that you don't neglect those important minerals. But yeah, I mean, salt's not an issue. If you go a bit high, your body will just excrete it out. Biggest issue with basically uric acid is that fructose tends to sort of cause a bit of dysregulation there, and it makes it a bit harder to clear out. Now, there's a more, ex-heavy drinker. Choline is another important thing. Not that one. My 3 bags, so I couldn't pick the right one. If you want to avoid, now you know what my video is going to be all about choline and fatty liver. Well, so you want to export fat out efficiently, you may have to take at least 1 gram. You may even try a bit more than that, like 1.5 or 2, depending on, because I mean, if you're eating enough meat, some eggs and stuff like that, you may be getting enough, and you may only need 1 gram to export fat out of your liver. So to get all those fat droplets out of there, and also to keep it much healthier, so it can actually deal with the other issues, because remember, you've got a lot of alcohol that's being converted to, to fat, like fructose is being also, but in order to export that stuff to get it out of the damn liver, so your liver can actually work properly, and and your kidneys can work properly, and all that, with all the other issues in terms of uric acid, the side of things, you need to export that stuff out. Now it's going to go to your adipose tissue, unless you're an athlete and which I suspect not, but I don't know, maybe you are, to burn it off. But you also need B vitamins. That's another factor. You will burn through far more B vitamins due to alcohol and fructose. It's just the nature of the beast. Choline, B vitamins. It's my hack when I go out drinking. And also, what the downside is, when you have too many B vitamins, it can actually inhibit you getting drunk enough. So if you like getting drunk, you may have to ease off on the B vitamins, get drunk, then when you get home, have the B vitamins so you don't wake up with a hangover. So have additional, so that's another thing, from one drinker to another, whereas my sister would say from one alcoholic to another. She's quite blunt about these things. There's a guy with a YouTube channel that promotes treating tinnitus with a carnivore diet. He's from Melbourne. Look, a carnivore diet will have more taurine in it, and so taurine will help in that regard. And also, it'll have a lot of the fat-soluble vitamins, and they also help as well. So it's a combination of, cholesterol, fat-soluble vitamins, and taurine. But the other ones, there's no science behind them. I can't point you to a specific study or science where, this fat-soluble vitamin or that fat-soluble vitamin or that. The only thing I can point you out to is taurine, because there is studies on that with rats in that regard. So I wouldn't disagree with him entirely, because you're going to get more taurine in a carnivore diet than you'll get in any other diet. So in a way, yep. But as Osmo has actually said, his tinnitus hasn't gone away. Because there's two types. One can be from deficiency, and the other one can be from damage, actual damage. So you can have far too much damage to basically for it to for things to be sorted out, or they can take longer. I can tell you from my own experience, when I'm on a taurine supplement, I used to get, because I used to basically be in a bit of heavy metal and rock and stuff like that. And so, and yes, that does affect your hearing. And I've basically, when I'm on taurine, it doesn't, I take it for different reasons, taurine, as an amino transporter, but it seems to eliminate that problem and I've actually done an experiment. I've been off taurine for ages, and I've once, this was probably about 5 or 6 months ago. I can't remember exactly, but I actually had a bit of ringing. And I was at work. I'm going, oh, fuck, but I was under stress as well, so trying to get a job finished because I was under pressure. Some of the, anyway, I won't go into it. Do not discuss work. So I would say that the carnivore diet, not exclusively, it's probably much better at sorting out that problem. But also depends on whether the tinnitus is from, just regular type of damage or regular type of deterioration, or is it basically from some, severe sort of issue that, that no food or supplementation or whatever will be able to sort it. So there are different, it's like, like cancer or anything, that not everything's the same, so there can be multiple causes, but the majority of causes are usually from nutrient deficiencies and stuff like that. Sorry, the majority of causes actually are from some damage from too much noise, and the second most is from certain deficiencies. So it's the second one. So if you've got the second one, or then taurine will help. If you don't, hard to say. Maybe you just think yourself as a rat, like I do, and then basically you have the placebo effect. It's just a joke. Look, it's one of those things. And then the dose, I take about a bit over a gram, but maybe, try a gram, then try 2 grams. Don't go too high. Don't go over 5. Definitely don't go over 5. I probably wouldn't even go over 3. I'd go as high as 3, and that's it. That's a hard one, mate. Just try it. Give it a go. Get yourself a supplement and see how you go. And I would be very interested to find out whether it, for me it works, but, you may have more damage. I don't know. Hard to say. Thanks, mate. Go and get some sleep. We're about to. I'm about to finish it off anyway in about 3 minutes. So I'm just quickly cycling through. It's a comment. It definitely is. We don't get enough. So Osma, I've had tinnitus since teens. Fucked it with too much loud music. Look, I think autophagy has a role to play in all cells, in clearing out junk and sort of repairing stuff and improving things, but is it the panacea? Probably not. I mean, we sometimes put too much emphasis. Yes, you need that sort of pulsatile effect, but too much of anything is bad. So I would say try taurine, see whether it works. If you're over 40, you should basically be supplementing at least a gram every day anyway. So it's one of those things I usually say, if you're an old fart like me, you should be basically on taurine. I'm on choline because I've also got some SNPs that don't allow me to properly convert and do a whole lot of things. So I sort of take additional to support that methylation pathway. That's the only reason. And it's only, I usually take it when I can't be fucked eating too many eggs. Like I've had, a week where I've consumed too many eggs and I'm just gone, "Ugh," I don't know how that old geezer was consuming 25 on average every bloody day. God almighty. Talk about, he must have loved the stuff, Yep. It's not much. Just put in some milk or water. It's pharmaceutical grade. It tastes like shit in water. But yeah, it's an acquired taste. Truly is. Look, I know it works for me. I know it works for the rats. I don't know whether it will work for you. I've had anecdotal evidence from others that they have, improved. Some have improved. Some have had complete elimination like me. So I can't say it's a panacea or something that will, it may work. Even if you get some relief, it's better than no relief, So give it a try, see how it goes. I hope it does work out for you. Let me know, because the more N of one results we have, the more confident I feel at sort of pushing it to more people in that regard. So I've had fun, guys. God, there's been quite a few questions that I haven't got through, and then I lost my way with the actual, the sort of all the stuff and all that. So I'm a bit out of whack in that regard. But I mean, if there's really important stuff that I've missed tonight or today, I mean, just please put them down in the comments area. If I get a chance later tonight or tomorrow, I'll go through them and basically I'll answer. I don't mind answering after the fact. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the live stream or stuff like that. Even if it's after, I'll basically go through and just pick up on any of those. Okay, so we will call it quits. I had fun. Thanks, guys. Please like and subscribe. So at least, and share. Share as much as possible. And even if you don't want to share, the entire live stream or stuff like that, you can, on YouTube, you can time stamp it and pick up a moment that you find interesting and just put it on, on a share it somewhere where it may help a friend or a person in your family or whatever. And oops, you're welcome, mate. Yep, I would. And give it a try. I mean, what's your age, Ozma? I'd be interested. See you, mate. Good seeing you. You're welcome, mate. I wouldn't fountain of wisdom. That's a bit anyway. Small amounts of wisdom, you know. Let's not overinflate my ego. Oh, next summer. So you're in your 40s. So you're in that level where you will need to, you know, as I say to people, after 40, I mean, there will be people that will say that that a lot of things start declining after 30, but they don't really. You know, there's a bit, but it's very minor. You know, it's really after 40 and onwards that we see bigger declines in a number of the machinery, because it does take some time, and it also another important thing that I haven't mentioned is the decline depends also on what your lifestyle has been. You know, if your lifestyle has been like for now for taurine synthesis, it's definitely after 40 for everyone to different degrees, but you know, for most other things, it also has a lot to do with your lifestyle, with general lifestyle. Yep, Joe, you know, you're at that critical point at 65 where this is when you get major declines. And I mean in things like, you know, not only taurine, choline, a number of other things and stuff like that. So you need to look at those issues even more. You probably need to add more eggs in your diet. I hope you are already, and even some and more protein as well. And also, because you have at that point more acceleration of sarcopenia and issues of that sort, get yourself some light weights. And if you're not doing any weights, just light weights. I've got my father, he's 85, and he just uses light weights, 1.5 kilos. They don't have to be very heavy, you know. I mean, we're not talking about massive stuff here. As long as you're basically doing, you know, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the late afternoon, you know, that's going to be really helpful for you. You know, you'll retain far more muscle mass, and that will basically put you in good stead in older age. So more protein and some weight lifting to maintain, because your myonuclei, you know, they're there, they haven't gone, and what they will do is they will get activated, and they will basically rebuild that, you know, that sort of muscle memory, or rebuild that muscle that you basically may have been declining in, and you need that as you go into older age. That will basically look after you far more. Just a gram. Don't go overboard. And if you're on, and when it comes to another thing I should have mentioned, sorry, when it comes to taurine and choline, they do reduce blood pressure. So if you're on blood pressure medication, you need to basically be very careful, extremely careful. So you need to basically check with your physician that you make sure that you're adjusting your medication. So don't do both at the same time. Do taurine or choline, whichever you want to prioritize initially. You know, Joey, probably choline in your case. You know, Ozma, probably taurine in his case. You know, and what you want to do is then basically do the gram, go and get yourself checked, make sure your doctor basically can adjust your meds if you're on meds, and then basically go try the other one and then go back to the doctor. If your blood pressure's good and you're not taking medication, that's fine, not a problem then. Then you don't have to worry. Or you'll basically get better low blood pressure. You know, it will lower, both choline and taurine will lower your blood pressure. So, you know, an extra bonus. Choline will do more because it actually also increases nitric oxide synthesis. Sorry, L-citrulline, I mean. That's the other one. That's the third one, the third pillar, L-citrulline, for nitric oxide synthesis. But all three will actually reduce your blood pressure to different degrees. Taurine will, choline will, and the other one that I take is L-citrulline malate, and that will dramatically reduce as well your blood pressure, even more than the others. So that's the one that I actually use, because that converts into L-arginine, and then L-arginine gets converted into nitric oxide and actually lowers your blood pressure quite a bit, which is important for us old geezers. And it's also better than Viagra. So that's another point. So L-citrulline. L-citrulline is your Viagra alternative. So keep that in mind. So if you want strong erections and you want to keep your partner happy, you need that as well. So anyway, we've had a bit of fun. We will discuss, bring anything that I haven't actually answered or whatever, just put it in the comments area and I'll deal with it this afternoon or tomorrow morning at some time. Anyway, good night, good day, or good evening, or to wherever you are. Thanks, guys. Take care, and we'll chat next week. Okay, see yous.